Everyone, welcome to the June meeting of Manhattan Community Board 4. We are continuing to hold these meetings under Zoom by executive order of the governor for the last 13 months, 14, 15 months, I guess now. Hopefully we will be returning to in-person meetings soon. And we are hopeful that when we do so, we'll be able to offer some kind of online streaming as well, but that remains to be seen. If the members of the public wish to speak at the appropriate time, please use the raise hand function. If you are on the telephone, it's *6 to unmute. I'm looking at you, Jesse. Did I get that right?
*6 to unmute and *9 to raise your hand.
Thank you. We are going to start this evening with a presentation regarding the New York Police Department's Business District Recovery Initiative. And that presentation will be given to us by Deputy Inspector Stephen Hellman. Deputy Inspector, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me. How's everybody? So my name is Deputy Inspector Stephen Hellman. I'm currently assigned to Patrol Borough Manhattan South, but I was given the task to oversee the Business District Recovery Initiative detail by the Chief of Department and the Police Commissioner. A little bit about the unit. We were up and running on April 18th. We started with a handful of officers, about 30, and now we're up to 2 lieutenants, 7 sergeants, and 80 police officers. And I think it's going to be growing based on some successes we've had, but we know there's a lot of challenges. Why the unit was created? It was created with the quality of life concerns that I'm sure everyone sees in the city. That compounded with the reopening of New York City. Right now, everyone going back to work, people, trying to get back to some normalcy. And there was some strong concerns about the quality of life issues we see in and around the city in specific areas to focus on initially, which I really believe is going to become a citywide. It's a pilot program now. I think it has, it could become a citywide permanent project. When I speak of quality of life, what am I talking about? We see it, the homeless encampments, the vagrants walking around out there with obvious mental health conditions, committing random assaults, acts of menacing, and I mean, you see what's out there, and that's some of the things, the low-level narcotics use, aggressive panhandling, illegal vending, and that's some of the quality of life issues we've been tasked to address. With that being said, a strong foundation of what we do, although there are a lot of moving parts, which I'll get into, but a foundation of it is really my cops being out there, being seen on foot, connecting with, the businesses, because right now we're in a primarily business district area. Our footprint right now, we have 2 zones. We have a Midtown zone that goes from 5th Avenue to 10th Avenue, from 34th Street to 59th Street. And we have a real small area on Canal Street from West Broadway to Center Street to focus on that historical trademark counterfeiting vending issues. But a majority of my personnel is really focused on that Midtown area right now. Another strong aspect to my unit, or our unit, what we're using here is our relationship with our external partners. DHS, Department of Sanitation, Department of Health and Hospitals, the Consumer Affairs Workers Protection, the trademark counterfeiting liaisons that help out with the brand companies that go out to help us identify these, illegal vendors. Community boards like yourself, once I hear, complaints and situations, and local leaders, as well. Just to go over some of the successes we had already. I mean, every day we provide officers to go out with DHS, health and hospitals, and the clinicians, and we try to identify their clients they have identified for mental health hygiene removals. That applies to some of those really problematic individuals you see on the street and we'll take them and we bring them to the hospital and make sure they get there. Health and hospitals make sure that they stay there for 72 hours at least. I mean, I know they probably get back out eventually, but we still stay on it. We've done 50 joint operations in regards to that. We've done 25 mental health removal orders just in under 2 months already. We also do joint operations with DHS regarding these really problematic encampments. I know you see it. We've done 47 successful cleanups in that Midtown zone for those encampments that we see. We're really getting back into being more aggressive as far as, not arresting these individuals. It's not a crime to be homeless, but, those encampments that you see, blocking the sidewalk, and the really egregious amount of property that they obviously can't use themselves. And we try to get them the help they want, and we're trying to clean up these areas. We've had like success, like I said, I think 47 successful cleanups in just 2 months. Do they come back? Yeah, sure. Is there just some displacement? There are. We follow up, we go back, and we really stay on it. And that's a broad stroke at what we're doing right now. It's still fluid, and we're looking to tweak if there's any problems, be more efficient. But that's really the foundation of what we're doing.
Can you identify what the geographic area you're covering?
Like I said, so right now, we established 2 zones initially. Just our footprint is, what was it? The Midtown zone is 34th to 59th Street, 5th to 10th Avenue, and a strong piece, and that small piece on Canal Street. However, I should add that we do operations outside that zone. So those 2 zones, that's really a foundation of our footposts along the 34th Street corridor and along 8th Avenue, some of 9th Avenue. We're really where we see right now that those vagrants are out there, and there's some strong safety issues and quality of life issues. Now, it could move, and we could move, let's say, further north on 8th Avenue South as we see displacement and conditions changing. But those are our 2 zones. But we do like if let's say the Union Square Park bid has an issue by Union Square, the Garment Center bid, or community board, in the 7th precinct, we're open to hear complaints, and I can help out precinct commanders when they exhaust all their, personnel, and I have some specialists. So I will assist precincts when, they have complaints that they can't deal with and they need some extra help. And I do go outside that zone when it comes to joint operations or some really egregious problematic encampments or an individual that clearly qualifies for a mental health removal, and I'll send my clinicians and my officers outside that zone. But right now, those footposts are in those 2 zones, to answer your question.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the board have questions for Deputy Inspector Hellman?
I have a quick question. I came in late, so I hope this is appropriate, but there seems to be a bunch of cars parked at the no standing zone on 34th Street between Dyer and 10th Avenue. And they seem to be going to the Javits Center, but it's a turn lane and it's creating a lot of traffic and it's just a lot of chaos. I don't know why the rules are not being enforced. I see plaques for, people at the Javits Center, but
I could, I think that's the 10th precinct, and I could reach out to that CO, but that's not in my wheelhouse. Parking.
Okay, if you could reach out to that CO, that would be great, because it's creating traffic.
You got it.
Armageddon.
All right,
And safe tour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie.
Thanks. I had just 2 questions. So as you were just sort of referring to the wheelhouse of your group, it sounds like you're sort of focused on quality of life, but specifically dealing with homeless people, or is that what you would?
No, we have a homeless component, and so what I do is, as far as the homeless, I give about 6 officers to them daily out of my 80, and they basically, those joint operations, those cleanups, the going out with the clinicians, that's just one component. And the other component is, as I spoke of, like these vagrants that are walking. I mean, maybe they aren't homeless, but like the individuals that are committing the random assaults, the low-level narcotics use in public, just that I don't know if you see it around these individuals that, I'm not saying there's anything wrong and we can get them help, but like the ones that up to no good out there, and we want people that are going to and from work, going to lunch. We want them to feel safe. We want them to see officers out there. We're taking summary action when we have to, only when we have to. I mean, we're not arresting people that don't deserve to be arrested. Sometimes we're issuing warnings. Sometimes we're getting them to the hospital. But being around these problematic areas, right now we see, I don't know if it falls into your area, but like 8th Avenue from 34th Street to like 40th Street, the 34th Street corridor, where we see all these people coming out of Penn Station. That we're focusing right there. I'm working with the MTA, with transit, because it's really egregious right there, right
Okay,
now.
so then I just had two, thank you, that's hugely clarifying. I just had two quick questions. One, your officers who are dealing with the homeless, so are they only doing it in conjunction with DHS, or do they have special training? Because I know that in the past, there's been great interaction and great training for officers.
My officers are CIT trained, crisis intervention training, which is very important with dealing with these type of individuals. I would have to say, when we do the cleanups with the encampments as well as the mental hygiene removals, we are working in joint operations with our external partners. Yes, there are times when my officers are out there and they may see a situation, and then we'll call and then come back out with like a coalition, so to speak. But they are qualified to handle it on their own.
Yeah,
we are working on like a team.
Great. And the other question is just, so when people in our community see problems, quality of life problems that they would like to report or to see addressed, is there a way to sort of reach out to you guys, or are they just supposed to call?
Well, you could reach out to my unit. I can, I'll give you my email and I can give you all the information, but like, what kind of problem are you talking about? Like what?
Well, there have been lots of concerns about people reporting in our district, seeing a lot of drug use on certain corners and saying that they feel like it's not being addressed. You
could call my unit. You could also call 311. I monitor, my staff monitors the 311 calls in the area to see where we're, and the 911 calls, obviously, if it's an emergency, and we'll analyze where it's spiking, what they are, the chronic calls, and if the precinct are handling it appropriately. And then we follow up when it falls into our, whether it's homeless or quality of life issues, and it falls into our purview, we analyze the 311s. But you can call my unit too. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to take the other three hands that are up, and then I'm going to cut this off. Christine is next.
Yes, thank you, officer. Very helpful. So what is, when do we go to the precinct and when do we go to you? What is the coordination between those two units?
So I'm in well, just a little history of myself. I've been in this borough as an executive in Manhattan South. That covers like, all the way from Battery Park up into 59th Street for the past 10 years. I was commanding officer of 2 precincts and the executive officer of 3 precincts. I know every CO personally. I also oversee the NCO, the Neighborhood Coordinating Officer program for the whole borough. So to answer your question, let's say, if, you should be, what precinct do you live in? Do you know?
Midtown South.
Midtown South, right? So that's actually where my unit turns active. But yeah, so you should have a relationship with your NCO officers. If it's something that's not an emergency, you should have that. You can call the precinct, you can call 311 911, or give me like for instance, like if it's not an emergency, and it's something that, you wanted to take care of, like there's the same, suspicious individual that's hanging out on your corner every day, that would be 311 to your precinct, and they could refer it to me. But like I said, I'll leave at the end of this, I can give my information, my unit's information, and you can call me as well. So to answer your question, I would go through the precinct and have a relationship with your NCO officers. And I would, that's what I would do.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Bert?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation and all this information. And I hear that you say your people have special crisis intervention training. I'm curious about where do the people come from? Is there other training? Do people volunteer for this unit? Or do they pick it by seniority? How did you bring everybody together?
That's a very good question. That's sharp. So I'm batting a little like about 65 to 70% volunteers. And those volunteers, about 65% of the 80 that I have were prior members of the homeless outreach unit, prior members of the peddler teams. So they have these training in this area, and they used to do it before, last year, all the units were disbanded, so to speak. So they showed an interest. And I would say the other 20%, 15%, they were what we went by low seniority, and they were drafted into the unit, which isn't so bad.
Low seniority.
Right.
So it wasn't their real choice. They had.
Correct. No, that's how it works. That's how it works. But it's not so bad. They have weekends off. I'm a very fair supervisor, and I think they want to stay. So
Good. Thank you.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And finally, Maria.
Thanks, Lowell. I actually put my hand down. Inspector Hellman, you actually answered my question already. I was just curious about how you respond to calls. So you already gave all the avenues that you do.
Yeah, I said this on my last community board meeting, and a lot of people were, giving me scenarios where I can't tell you how important it is to have a relationship with your local precinct. And me being a prior CO for 6 years, you gotta really, your NCO officers, if you don't know who they are, you really should. If you don't, let me know. I'll reach out to your CO. But on the same token, feel free to reach out to my unit. You can call, and if it's not something that I actually handle, I could talk to the precinct CO. But I think communication is the key. It's really what the NCO philosophy is all about. And that's how, prior to COVID, we were having a lot of success and crime was down. And you didn't see the situations we had right now. Now, there's a lot of other external factors. I get it. But communication, I would definitely have a relationship with your precinct.
And communication is why we keep inviting you back, Deputy Inspector. We
No
appreciate
problem.
you coming.
My pleasure.
And hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to move on. We have 3 public hearings. The first is about the Slaughterhouse site. Jean Danielle, I'm going to ask you to chair that public meeting, please. That public hearing. JD, you around? Saw you. I know you were here. Go ahead, JD. Nope, we're not hearing you. That's the problem, huh?
Oh, we can take over for now. Janine, correct me if I'm wrong. No one has signed up for the public hearing. Is that correct?
No, the only one was for the zoning for accessibility hearing.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's just make this formal. Is there anyone who would like to speak about the Slaughterhouse, that's 495 11th Avenue, mixed-use affordable housing development? Is there anyone who would like to speak on that matter?
There's 2 hands up in attendees. Oh, one.
That one person is Carol Maloney.
No, there's someone named Roberto with his hand up.
Yeah, I can allow them to speak.
Okay. Roberto, did you want to speak about the Slaughterhouse site? Roberto.
Hi there. I thought I had signed up to speak. I think I used the wrong link. Can everyone hear me?
Okay,
Yes.
if it's not about Slaughterhouse, we'll call on you when we get there. We'll add
Oh,
you.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can we please add him to the public session list? Not seeing any other hands, I'm declaring this public hearing closed. The next one is the citywide zoning for accessibility text amendment. Paul Devlin, will you chair that public hearing, please?
Delighted, Lowell. So this is a citywide zoning text amendment for accessibility to MTA stations. I believe we have one person signed up to speak, but if anybody else is interested in speaking on the citywide amendment, please raise your hand now so you can be moved into the session. Miriam, if you want to state your name and address for us, please, and then you'll be given 2 minutes to speak.
Moving Miriam over now.
Miriam Fisher, the floor is yours.
I'm here. I'm here.
Welcome,
I'm
Miriam.
trying-
Miriam, you have 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, I wanted to also be clear what's been happening. I saw a draft of a letter that was supposed to be sent to the city council. Is the draft revised? Has it been sent? Because I've been at a couple of meetings. I spoke as an advocate for people who need the elevators, the disabled, and some of this, I see some of the same faces. You've heard some of it, but I would like to say a few words. But tell me what is happening with the draft. Has it been revised? Has it been sent? What's happening? Because a lot of it is questioning some of the plans and whether, the developers and what's going to really happen. Will there be
Miriam, I
surprises?
can answer the question for you just so we can move to your testimony. So the letter has not been sent. What you looked at as a draft, it gets posted the week before the full board. And tonight, the full board will be voting on that draft. It will then, once it is voted upon, and any
Okay.
friendly amendments have been added or changed, it will be then sent out as a final letter. And
Right,
we'll be
and that's item
posting
number
on
5 on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, I would like just to say a few words
Okay.
on the needs of the people who are being most affected, people with disabilities who need elevators. Despite the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, 31 years ago, the MTA is still fighting in court for years for determination that current subway inaccessibility is in violation of the ADA and the New York City human rights law. They withdrew staff lawyers and hired pricey new ones when the hearings weren't going their way. Approximately one half a million people in New York City have ambulatory disabilities, and about 1 million with disabilities with varying needs. We see few people in the subway in wheelchairs because of the tremendous difficulty navigating the system. Going from one accessible point A to an inaccessible point B destination such a job is almost impossible. The alternate circuitous route must be carved out, often adding hours to the commute and complicated planning. Most of us don't have to face this, but use the most efficient, quickest route. If our train is stuck, we are reasonably mobile and can find alternatives rather than get stranded for hours, as many people in wheelchairs using the subway often do. This is discriminatory, not equal access to transportation. Separate is not equal. Approximately 900 elevators still need to be constructed to make the system 100% accessible. 900 meaning there are about 471 stations. Often they need 2 or 3 elevators. Only about 25% of the stations have elevators currently out of 471 stations. An important avenue to pursue this is the Zoning for Accessibility project, which uses developers' funds for elevator construction and frees the MTA to use the savings for more elevators. That was what was presented. I went to several meetings by the team that is, and these questions came up.
Thank you, Miriam.
Can I say one more ending?
You can close, yes.
Okay, elevators are for people with disabilities, seniors, parents with strollers, bad backs and knees, travelers with luggage, delivery persons. The young 22-year-old mother, Malaysia Goodson, who fell and died on steep steps on the 7th Avenue IND station in 2019, holding her baby daughter in her stroller, reminds us how vital is the need for elevators. Okay.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Appreciate your testimony as we did at the Land Use Committee. So we'll be voting on that later tonight. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on the zoning text amendment? I don't see any other hands coming up. So I am going to declare this hearing closed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. We have one more public hearing on the citywide hotel special permit application. Betty McIntosh, will you do this one for us?
Yes, this is a citywide text amendment for all new hotels, and it would require a special permit. The idea is to make zoning more consistent and the requirements more consistent. And it would replace existing special permits except in M1 districts. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? I guess.
We had no one sign up for it.
Okay, so there being no speakers, the hearing is closed.
Thank you, Betty. We now move to our public session, for which I will turn the floor over to our first Vice Chair, Jeffrey LeFrancois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. As is our custom during the public session, members of the public who have signed up to speak in advance will have 2 minutes to speak on a topic of their choosing. I will give a warning as your time approaches its end to wrap up your comments. If you have not signed up to speak, right now I have 13 speakers. Please raise your hand. We will close that list at 7 p.m. It's 6:57 right now. Again, if you have not signed up to speak already, please raise your hand so I can add you to the list. We've made some changes in the past 2 months, making sure that folks have ample time to sign up in advance. So just extending that further option right now, that if you've not signed up, to please do raise your hand. James, I've added you, and I see nobody else. So with that, I'm going to bring our first three folks, Tim Gamble, Winifred Lee, and Brad Simons.
Tim and Brad don't seem to be here yet. Winifred, I brought over.
Okay, great. Winifred?
Winifred, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hi, sorry about that. My name is Winifred Lee, and I work with Grow NYC's Green Market, and we just reopened our 57th Street Green Market today on 57th Street and 10th Avenue outside of the Starbucks. And we're really excited to be back. For those of you who aren't familiar, our Green Market has a vegetable farmer, a fruit farmer, and a baker. They're all from upstate New York, and starting in mid-June, our meat farmer will be back on Saturdays too. This market is on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The farmers obviously take cash and credit card, debit cards. You can use your EBT card, as well as for anybody who's using their PEBT cards. They can use their cards there at the farmers market too. And yeah, we're really excited to be there. We'll be there every Wednesday and Saturday until Thanksgiving. Thank you.
And will composting be back also?
Right now, the city has authorized refunding for the compost program, but we don't know which of our sites will actually get it yet. So as soon as we know that, I can definitely send it to the community board too.
And I assume the same is true for textile recycling?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can consider noting that this site does not yet have compost, and we might consider advocating for that.
Yeah. Right now, the closest sites that are doing it that are at our green markets is the one by the Natural Museum History on Sundays on 79th Street in Columbus.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
That was all within Winifred's 2 minutes, my questions there, so thank you for the indulgence. Next couple of speakers, Thomas Lunk, Marion Moore, and Bobby Rabania.
You skipped over Eric.
Eric repeated himself 3 times. So I have him at Eric as number 11.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's number 4 on my list. So,
would you like me to speak now?
Sure. The floor is yours, Thomas.
Okay. It's Lunky. Thank you.
Lunky. Sorry about that.
For having me. Good evening. My name is Tom Lunky. As a former member of Manhattan Community Board 4 and an urban planner who has lived in Chelsea for nearly 30 years, I wholly support award-winning historian and author Eric Washington's request to have the Landmarks Preservation Commission designate 128 West 17th Street, formerly known as Colored School Number 4, a New York City landmark. I also support this proposal going before the Chelsea Land Use Committee for a more detailed and inclusive discussion. For 20 years, I worked in Harlem with Eric and others to preserve and enhance that iconic community's African-American legacy, and know Eric to be an excellent source of information leading to landmarking historic sites. Greater Chelsea has always been a mixed race community from its earlier years as the Tenderloin and Sailor's Haven to today. There are few, if any, landmarks dedicated to celebrating the African-American presence in Chelsea, especially in education. And this proposal is a long overdue step towards correcting this, especially during our awakened consciousness surrounding Black lives. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Jesse, why don't we bring Eric over?
Eric should be over.
Okay, great. Is Marion here?
Eric, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, the floor is yours, Mr. Washington.
Oh, hi, hi everyone. Thanks for letting me speak. I wanted to address Manhattan CB4 about designating as an individual landmark the three-story Reconstruction era building at 128 West 17th Street. Was built circa 1870, formerly known as Colored School Number 4. It was later called Grammar School Number 81. That was one of the most renowned racial caste schools that the Board of Ed maintained for African-American children. The Department of Sanitation has administered the building's use for most of the past century. In late 2018, I submitted an illustrated and documented request for evaluation, an RFE, to Landmarks Preservation Commission. Research Director Kate Lemus-McHale gave a very timely and positive reply soon after in early 2019. And indeed, the school's general history is familiar to LPC, which designated Brooklyn's similar Colored School Number 3 some 20 years prior. This past April, after it languished about 2 years, I followed up on my original 2018 RFE to Landmarks with some appended information. Ms. McHale replied right away that the LPC was researching the building. Given LPC's confirmation, but ever mindful of its backlog, I urge CB4's support in prioritizing this important historical, architectural, and cultural site on the Landmarks agenda. And I welcome an opportunity to better introduce CB4 members to the property, which I discussed at some length in my biography, Boss of the Grips, The Life of James H. Williams and the Red Caps of Grand Central Terminal, and as a waypoint on On-Site Opera's company's current The Road We Came musical tour. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. It sounds like this would be business to taken up if it isn't already. Jesse, is this something we
received the material today, and I forwarded it to the co-chairs of the Chelsea Land Use Committee.
Okay, got it. So just Mr. Ryan, so you know, procedure here, what will happen is our committees will review what you've sent and determine whether or not it goes on an agenda. And it certainly, this is something that it sounds like we would want to hear out on our agenda. And then the relevant committee would take it up, invite you to present. That committee would then have a discussion, formulate an opinion, hear from the public, and we would wend its way through our standard process that way.
Jeffrey, just to note, Paul's nodding his head, so I think this is going to Chelsea Land Use.
Got it. So it will be on our Chelsea Land Use Committee agenda in the coming, there we go, month. So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, and stay tuned for that meeting date and what else you can do to help us learn more about this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse, did we find Marion Moore? If not,
I don't believe so.
And I don't see Bobby either. So Evan Haynes.
Bobby's here. Bobby's here.
Bobby's here. Okay. So Bobby, and then Mike Ladone and Carl Wilson.
There he is.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Bobby, floor is yours.
All right. My name is Bobby Robina, representing the Fashion Institute of Technology. Lisa Wager was unable to attend tonight's meeting. We had a nice presentation from the NYPD, so now you'll hear from the Fashion Police. The 2021 Future of Fashion Showcase. So we've posted the annual Future of Fashion Showcase with nearly 200 senior thesis collections from the 2021 class of Fashion Design Bachelor of Arts students. FOF, as we call it, is typically a professionally produced in-person runway show and a very tough ticket to get. But this year it was reimagined as Runway from Home, a 23-minute fashion video that celebrates the creativity and resilience of our graduating fashion design students from 42 countries and 6 continents. Both the video and the portfolios can be found on the Future of Fashion website at fitnyc.edu. And you can also see the designs in the students' digital portfolios, which have sketches, photography, and personal statements. On another note, NYC by Design and Lenny Vuitton, as he's called. I'm excited to share that recent grad Lenny Vuitton, MFA in Fashion Design 2019, is part of NYC by Design's Emerging Designer Residency at the shops at Hudson Yards in the district. This started in May, and through the end of June, 4 recent graduates have transformed a large storefront into a pop-up studio where they are creating their own work and showcasing finished projects, that is. It's beautiful work, and you can see it in person or on the NYC by Design website. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it.
Bobby will next be appearing at Caroline's in Times Square.
Yes. Hopefully
Audience.
it's a joke as that one. Mike Ladon, Carl Wilson.
Hi, I'm Mike Ladon, and I'm
Hi, Mike. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Please excuse my ignorance as far as how this proceeds. My first time here, and I'm just trying to check it out. I'm the president of Disability Pride NYC and the founder of the Disability Pride Parade in New York City. And I spoke to Leslie, is it Bogosian Murphy? On the phone, just on a call. You know, she was making a call to get to roust support. And I said some things and she said, why don't you come to a meeting? So here I am. And what I spoke about with her is I said, how do you stand, where do you stand on disability issues? Simple ones like the rotten curb cuts in the sidewalks in my neighborhood, Hell's Kitchen, and all over the city. And she said, why don't you come to a meeting? So I'm here basically to say, how do you get action? How do you make things happen? I'm asking you people, and I don't know if I should, but this is all I'm here for. How do you get things to improve in that direction? Because there are so many. I mean, my daughter's disabled. I travel with her. She's in a wheelchair a lot of the time. I try and push her up these curb cuts, and most of the times I have to stop and lift the front of her wheelchair up to get it over the lip. Otherwise, she would just wreck and fall forward and fall out of the chair. And it's almost impossible to go from street to street, from block to block. So what do you do? How do you get the action to take place? How do you get these things fixed? It's not only curb cuts, it's so many.
I see you, but
sure.
The Transportation Committee takes up these issues regularly. This is the full board meeting, and then we have a number of committees. And the Transportation Committee, both of whom are raising their hand, and I'm going to pass it over to in just a second, regularly takes up the issues of curb cuts. We have a very strong history of getting curb cuts replaced and improved in the district. We realize we have a long way to go, but we regularly advocate for that. And if you have specific locations that we should be putting higher up on the list, you should certainly send those through to the board for the Transportation Committee to consider.
Okay.
Christine, Dale, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and Dale is there too. We are both, we would welcome you sending the information and coming to the meeting and chatting about it. And we just did a survey of sidewalks and, where that issue was raised as much as anything else. and we would love you to. So please send it to the board, to Jesse, and we'll send it to us, and we'll put you on the agenda.
How do I send it to the board? I'm sorry.
Mike, it's Jesse Bodine here I'm the district manager. I will reach out to you.
Okay.
Tomorrow let's touch base.
Mike,
Okay.
our transportation committee meeting is in 2 weeks, and it's typically the third Wednesday, same time, third Wednesday of each month, and we welcome you to attend.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Let's see. Carl Wilson. Is there a person by the name of Carl Wilson here this evening? And then if we can bring over Leslie Thrope, James is already here, and then Marnie Halassa.
I used to know someone named Carl Wilson.
I know. I wonder if they're using his name.
He left town.
No, he has not left town. But thank you, Jeffrey. I am joining everybody tonight in the public session and not during the elected speakers portion. As some of you may know, last week was my last week in the speaker's office. I have.
You went.
Your
Carl, you went mute.
Nobody hear? I
Now
can't hear me.
Now
Okay, so I don't know where it cut off, but I was saying last week was my last week in the speaker's office. I have decided to take a bit of a step back to pursue some personal goals related to some creative outlets and performance outlets. But for the past 3.5 years, I have had the great privilege of working very closely with members of this board who have taught me immensely about this community, about this city, and about how you get things done here on the West Side. It has been a really amazing 3.5 years working with all of you. I am in awe of the talent, the ability, and the brains that occupy this board. Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea are so lucky to have you all going to bat for them on so many issues. I still live in Hell's Kitchen. I don't plan to totally exit Community Matters, but in my stead, my colleague Brittany Bowen will be the new Community Board 4 liaison. She is not brand new to our office. She has been working with me on a number of these issues, so she's not stepping in brand new like I did. So she won't have the learning curve that I did. But you'll hear from her tonight. And I just want to give a special shout out to Bert and Lowell, who were the chairs that I worked with. And also a giant shout out to Jesse Bodine, who for the past 3.5 years has been a major partner and someone I've leaned on tremendously to get things done in this community. So a heartfelt thank you to all of you, and not so long until next time. And I sleep better at night knowing that the West Side has you all looking out for it. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Carl. And really nice of you to come tonight. But hold on, Mr. Chair, did you have something to add or say?
Yeah, well, in addition to thanking Carl for all of his great work over the last few years, we are going to miss you, buddy. But the role of the chair for this board has one really extreme limitation, and that's we don't control the membership of the Musical Comedy Committee. So I am imploring the chair of the Musical Comedy Committee to please allow Carl to remain on the committee, because it won't be the same without him. So,
well, you took my question and I second that.
As a public member.
JD, if you will allow Carl to remain as a public member of the Musical Comedy Committee, it would be greatly appreciated.
Jay-Z, we can't hear you.
Well, you have to explain for the people who are new to the board.
Do I really, Christine?
You
We are
do.
the only board in the city of 59 boards that has a Musical Comedy Committee, because of course we represent the theater district. And if our past work, including a horrible cameo appearance from me, appears on YouTube. And Jesse, and as part of the orientation of all our new members, we will force you to watch said show. So, and you'll.
I would be honored to remain on if the chair of the committee would have me. Yes.
I've been begging the chair of the committee to let me join.
So the chair of the committee is not on mute, but we seem to be having microphone issues and can't hear from him at the moment. I know, and he seems very worked up about that. My guess is his extreme objection to keeping Mr. Wilson on the committee. But in his silence, I think we'll consider it. And go from there.
Carl,
I know there's a bunch of hands up. So I'm glad. I think they were all about the musical comedy committee and ensuring Carl's continued presence there, which I'm glad there's such agreement on, even though, you know, it's nice to not have contention.
Again, Carl, thank you so much for everything you've done for this district, this board, and the residents of Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah, I stepped on your line, Jeffrey.
Bravo.
Okay. Let's see. Leslie, James, and then Marnie.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Thrope, and I'm the Executive Director at Housing Conservation Coordinators. And before Carl leaves, I just want to thank him for being a very responsive person to HCC and our tenants when we needed help. So thank you, Carl. And if I can have a little bit of time to just say that. So Carl, thanks for your public service to the community. I'm really here today as your resident, I guess not fashion police, but tenant rights police, to inform people that as of yesterday, the emergency rental assistance program applications were put online. So I'm imploring everybody to, help your neighbors to put up, if you can go to OTDA, Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance website, download and print out their flyers, give them to your neighbors, anybody you think who is vulnerable, who owes rental arrears, whether you know it or not, and to help people and educate people that this program now exists. So we are in a 30-day period where the state will be prioritizing those who owe rental arrears who are more vulnerable than other people. So those people are households with 50% AMI or less. And just to give you an idea, that's one person who earned in 2020 or currently earns $41,800 or less. A family of four is $59,000. This is all on the website at otda.ny.gov. And I really want everybody to know that immigration status does not affect those who can apply for this rental assistance, which will pay up to 12 months of rental arrears and 3 months of future rental arrears that may become due. So I implore everybody to go on and educate yourselves and to let your neighbors and tenants in your building and residents that you know to look on the website and apply for this program. It's time sensitive. After 30 days, they will prioritize those 80% AMI income, veterans, DV survivors, human traffic survivors, those who are in risk of eviction. So I know my time is up, and the message is really, this is a very important program for those who owe rent. Please look on the website and apply timely. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Jeffrey, can I ask a question of Leslie? Is that appropriate?
If I can answer,
what's the question, Dale?
Sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Dale.
Hi, Leslie, thank you for the information. Do you know if the program applies for eligible tenants who are having trouble with their utility bills, such as electrical bills?
Yes, it also covers electric and gas, up to 12 months of arrears that are due on electric and gas. I'm glad you asked. It's rental arrears and gas and electric. Okay, thank you. Good question. Good night, everybody, and I hope everybody's happy and healthy.
Good night, Leslie. Thank you. James Wallace and then Marnie Halassa. James?
Hello, hello, hello. First, go Knicks. Gotta survive. I'm just starting my timer. I'm speaking tonight. You know, I don't usually take the 2 minutes before the meeting. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not as a member of the community board. I just want to say that to keep Jesse and Lowell happy. When I first moved to New York, I did not, I was a registered independent. And then I realized that, you know, in New York City, you really can't vote for anybody of substance unless you participate in the primaries. So I did register as a Democrat. And for the last, 10 years being on the community board, you know, I really haven't advocated on anyone's behalf. And I want to be clear, no one asked me to do this. This is a surprise to the person who's listening. We are about to enter the primaries. I want to encourage everyone to vote. We have ranked choice voting for the first time. I think that's really decreased the temperature and made people more sort of collegial in their campaigns. But, you know, I received this flyer in the mail. And Leslie's a little embarrassed. And I just want you to know, I did meet with her for lunch. The last member of city council.
James, I just want to caution you that the Conflict of Interest Board issued a ruling that community board members cannot publicly endorse in a campaign. And so even though you've stated that you are not here on behalf of board business, it's a very fine line that you're walking.
Got it.
This ruling was made about 6 months ago. And so this is for your protection and the board as a whole.
I don't want to be sued and I don't want the community board to be damaged. So let me just say, please vote in the upcoming city council election. And the one thing I will say, without regard to any specific member of this community board, is that the last member of city council who will be elected from this district, Corey Johnson, was a member of this community board. And I think he did a really good job. And I think that should be something to think about when casting your vote. How about that? Is that okay, Jeffrey?
There, you did it. Thank you for.
Did you see me? Did you see
pulling
me?
yourself back from the line?
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Jeff, I've got one other caution for James, if I may.
Yes.
I'm taping the Knick game and I'm watching it after this board meeting is over, so please don't announce a score.
I thank you for that caution. I will also be paying strict attention to this meeting, but there might be a little window where something else is going on.
Yeah, I just don't say anything publicly, please. I want to watch the game in its entirety. In fact, I almost put on my Knicks shirt tonight to counter our mayor.
All right. I'm cutting this off because we have 2 more speakers on our list and an agenda ahead of us. The Knicks is not on it. So
I could have sworn we had a meeting about the Knicks yesterday, Jeffrey.
Eric Haynes is here, who I called earlier. So I apologize if the mispronunciation of the last name, but Eric, I'm going to go to Marnie next, who I had called, and then we'll bring it to you to close us up. So Marnie, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, yes, everybody needs to vote. I just want to put that out there. But I've been pushing for the passage of the Small Business Jobs for Survival Act for 4 years. The SBJSA, which would ensure that the rent of a city commercial space wouldn't skyrocket when the lease ends. And this has been languishing in the city council for 30 years. I'm sure many of you know about this. The bill levels the playing field between business owner and landlord. So landlords wouldn't have all the power in lease negotiations, which is a dynamic of property rights regulation that's desperately needed. And I've said this before in an op-ed, and I'll say it again, with the crisis on our hands, small business closure crisis, it's time that the interests of the community are not just balanced against private property rights, but supersede them when necessary. This is not a repudiation of private property rights. This is a necessary regulation so our city survives. So I just want to encourage everybody, the next council member that gets elected and the next speaker has got to support in a very important way. They've got to support the SBJSA, because if we don't save our small businesses, we're not going to have a city. So this is very, very specific legislation. When I talk to business owners in the district, they want substantial rent relief. to mitigate the backlog of thousands of dollars in unpaid rent. That's a different issue. That's canceling the rent. But the SBJSA would also allow them the ability to renegotiate their leases with their landlords. They need that. They also need a meaningful break on property taxes, permit and other fees. They want to extend the moratorium on eviction. So basically, I have a plea, and I wonder if the community board could maybe pass some kind of resolution in support of SBJSA. I know you guys do that sometimes, but we need to save our small businesses in the district. It's very, very specific legislation that would give all business owners a long-term, affordable, and renewable lease.
Marnie,
Was that for me?
That's for you. You can wrap up. The request being to support the Small Business Job Survival Act, right? It seems we've lost you.
Yeah, but that's what it was, and that would we used to we had a working group that would have addressed that has not met in a while.
So I'm going to move to our next speaker. Evan, if you can round out the public session for us, that would be great.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. I didn't hear you call me earlier. I wanted to introduce myself and thank you for letting me speak. I'm part of the management and ownership of an office building on 34th and 8th called 5 Penn Plaza. We normally have about 4,000 people in our office building when things are normal. Today we had 127 people. I am very excited about what's happening around town, particularly immediately in front of us, about the beautification of the neighborhood. And I wanted to comment on the DOT proposal. And I spoke with Christine Berthet, who reached out last week and invited me to speak. I think that along with the group, you all have done a fabulous job with what seems to be on the immediate agenda. I'm staggered by the results of the magnificent Moynihan Train Hall, which was a public-private partnership. I've been working on and off at 5 Penn before anyone knew what a Penn Plaza district was. It was simply called 461 8th Avenue. We purchased the building in 1981. Moynihan Train Hall was a long time coming. We anticipated completion in the late 1980s. I want the community board to be aware of concerns that we have as it pertains to the DOT proposal to move the bike station from across the street, Duane Reade, in front of the west side of 8th Avenue. This isn't really just a problem for us. We think it's a problem for the community. The proposal brings a bike station to the entire block front of 200 feet. First and foremost, we view this as a fire safety concern, as a hindrance for emergency workers to come into the building, but specifically for City MD, who is our urgent care in the center of the block. The proposed station creates an enormous ADA impediment for our physically disadvantaged tenants, as well as for our mid-block urgent care. City MD, as you all in the neighborhood know, services the Empire Station complex with Penn Station, the recently opened Moynihan Train Hall, and with a garden across the street. Our tenants, residential and office neighbors, use the facility for emergencies and for routine appointments. Our property manager and I spoke with the office and facilities manager at City MD last Thursday at 3 o'clock. She told us that they had already had 3 ambulance pickups. Simple math says that 5 days a week, although for me and many of you, I presume, you're 24/7 in this neighborhood, 52 weeks a year, 3 pickups a week is about 800 ambulance pickups. If I'm off by 500, then we're talking about 300 times a stretcher is needed to ford the proposed bicycle station. In order to save time tonight, I'm summarizing the views of many of our tenants that I've communicated with so far. It is physically impossible to cross the bicycle station with a stretcher, even if all the bikes are out being pedaled. How do emergency workers cross this barrier? We don't even know how many bicycle stations will be housed within this depot. Thankfully, the DOT has agreed to a site visit and that we may collaborate on a slight modification of the DOT proposal for their design of this city bike station.
We're in the process of setting up a visit with a long practicing traffic engineer that if anybody from the DOT is on, they probably know, to help articulate such a modification.
Great.
400 people within.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up. We're over your 2-minute mark, and I think the message is very clear.
Okay. We believe that a slight modification will be wonderful for all of you, all of me, and our bicyclers and our other people within the community. So I look forward to reporting back and letting you know, but I appreciate your support and thanks for letting me speak.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And with that, Mr. Chair, I declare the public session closed this evening.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it. And thank you to all the members of the public who spoke. A couple of quick items of business here. We need to adopt the agenda. There is one new item of new business that is being added. And that's a letter from the Transportation Committee that has not actually gone through the committee. Aside from that, do I have any changes to the agenda? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
And I got a second from Katie Stokes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Anyone present, not eligible, or otherwise not voting? All right, the agenda is adopted. Last month's minutes, does anyone have any questions or comments? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
And I got a second from Katie again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone present, not eligible, or otherwise not voting? Good, we can move on to the next item of business, and I've got a lady with a mask on in a car who happens to be, I believe it's our borough president.
It is.
And I'm going to turn the floor over to Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So a few things. First of all, you know, the whole topic of public safety is very much on everybody's mind. And I have to say, thanks to your intervention and to the people in your community, between, I know you heard earlier from Inspector Hellman, Chief Tobin, I'm sure you heard from her. And obviously you have your local individuals who are working in the police department. I have to say, they are working together. The rest of the world is looking to see how the business district recovery, the work that Chief Tobin is doing interagency, and how you can make sure that the city gets back to work based on their work. So I just want to congratulate you. I think that the leaders of this particular effort and all the human services that are going with it would go very well for the rest of the city, but we shall see. But I just want to say congratulations, because having met with both of them a couple of times, I think that they understand what you and the community and the rest of us are trying to accomplish. This is the problem, though. From what I'm listening to, the great work that they do does not solve the problem of making sure the individual through something like the Midtown Court, and I was also on the phone with them for about an hour yesterday. And the issue, you know, is what happens to the individual when he or she is perhaps 72 hours into a hospital visit or something else. Where is the human service and the support after that, if in fact that person is out on the street again? And I don't think that's answered. You may have a better sense than I do. But I have to say, even the Midtown Court has a million fabulous programs, but they are not connected. And who says that? Not just Gail Brewer, because I am kind of always, the glass is only half full, but the people at the Midtown Court and all the groups working with them. So I think that's our next step, is to figure out how these folks get coordinated. So I just want to bring that to your attention, but generally, congratulations. We're also working a very controversial topic of all the street vendors. I know that there was an issue the other day with the street vendors in Hudson, all of the related buildings. And I thought it was interesting and brilliant. The one vendor figured out how to cut his cart in half so that he could fit in between the sort of planters that Related had built, only in Manhattan. But it's not right. We have to figure out how to make everybody live together. Clinton Towers is one of the few Mitchell-Lamas rentals left in the borough of Manhattan, and I think several people on your board know it extremely well and its history. But they just can't have a huge increase in rent, so we're trying to help them in that issue. I know that we're all focused on the issue of fighting anybody who is participating in Asian hate. And there was another press conference, not in your area, it was in Chinatown. But the reason I mention it is we're going to try to work with again and again and again with all the groups working on some PSAs with the Asian American Federation. It's just endless. We did do a letter, as you know, on the dirt bikes and the ATVs. I don't know if it'll help. I noticed that just after we did our letter, the police department had a press conference on what they're trying to do, and so did others running for office, but it is not addressed. I heard somebody earlier talk about the issue of storefronts. We feel very strongly about them. With Helen Rosenthal, City Council, I did introduce a bill. It's a little bit different than small business. That's SBJ that's currently pending. But what it basically says is something similar. The owner and the commercial tenant have to talk. At the same time, the lease is part of the problem. The owners sometimes give leases that are not understood. So it has to be very, very clear as part of the Bill of Rights. It has to be transparent. And hopefully entrepreneurs and people from the community, owner operator, go into some of the vacancies. We have a lot of them. And when they do, we want to make sure that they stay. So one of the suggestions is A, the two parties have to speak, and B, if they're going to have a real other party whom the owner wants to come in after the lease is up, they have to have a real party. It cannot be, as I see over and over again, a fictitious one. And then there's a discussion about how much time, if in fact that party really exists. All that kind of discussion is part of our bill. I'm glad to hear that the mayor said he's going to open the senior centers. We certainly started that discussion. We've had several days of action on that topic, but I'm not clear, nor are the senior centers, exactly how it's going to happen. So I bring that up because I hope you have so many great centers that you pay attention to it in Community Board 4. As you know, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we have a discussion either about vaccines or about the recovery. And the one this Tuesday was about education and all the money coming, not just from Albany, but from Washington. I mean, it is millions of dollars and it's all good if it goes to the right place. But right now, there isn't a specific. So we had 4 fabulous speakers about different aspects of the Department of Education's budget. And they're in huge lump sums, you know, 240 million here, 500 million there without specifics. So again, something to pay close attention to regarding the schools in your area. I don't want them to end up with not having the money they need. Right now, the biggest issue is the schools have full funding, but hundreds of kids have left the public school system in the borough of Manhattan. Some schools have lost 125, some schools have lost 100 kids. And then the question is, can the school keep the teachers and have smaller class size? And all of this is not clear to the principals, let alone to those of us who care deeply about the schools. We just, as you know, in our office, we've done almost 200 ULURPs as I've been borough president, and we have a whole bunch more, about 20 of them that are coming due, some of them in your area, but I think you know them only too well. So I say thank you to Board 4. I can tell you that there is an awful lot happening, but you are to be congratulated for thinking out of the box about how to deal with some of these public safety in a humane, transparent, and honest way, and trying to think of alternatives, and that's what you're doing. But the issue is what happens after the thoughtful process of trying to figure out how to deal with an individual, and then what? And I don't think anybody's clear, and coordination is human services is needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. We're going to now turn to our other, well, does anyone have any questions for the borough president before I move on? Okay, thank you all very much. I'm going to turn now to the rest of our electeds or their representatives who are here. As Carl mentioned, we have a new representative from Speaker Johnson's office. So everyone, please put your hands together and welcome Brittany Bowen.
Hi, everyone. I know I've met some of you before, but it's nice to meet everyone else. I'm Brittany, and I'm going to be the new Community Board 4 liaison for the Speaker's office. So I look forward to working with you guys. Carl has said great things, so I have high expectations. But I just wanted to share a couple of our upcoming events with you all. The first one is going to be tomorrow, June 3rd. It's going to be a ranked choice voting training, and that'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. If anyone's interested, they can email our office at speakerjohnson@council.nyc.gov. Our second event is going to be this Saturday, June 5th. It's going to be an e-waste recycling event that will be at Manhattan Plaza on West 43rd Street between 9th and 10th Avenues. You can also email us if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can just show up anytime between 10 and 4 to drop off your electronics. And then our third event is our virtual RAD Academy, which will be next week, Thursday, June 10th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. The training's for building supers, maintenance personnel, management companies, residents, and you can also sign up via our email address. You'll receive a Zoom link. And those are just the 3 events that I have for you all.
Does anyone want to put Brittany on the spot and ask a question? We're being nice to you tonight, Brittany. Thank you. You're welcome, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
You have very big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Moving on then. The New York State Legislature is finishing up its session, and I'm not sure whether Dick Godfried or Matt Ty from Dick's office are here. Did not see either of them. Matt is here. Look, there's Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Ty from Assemblymember Godfried's office. So as Lowell said, the legislature is in the final 2 weeks, and last I checked, they are still on the floor debating bills. So I just want to start out, Leslie mentioned the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. She went into the details of that, so I won't go into that, but I just want to say this $2.3 billion in this fund, which seems like a lot, but there is a lot of people in need all across the state. So if you do need to apply for this assistance, I recommend doing it as soon as possible. And you can absolutely contact our office for assistance in applying. In addition to that, there's also recovery grants for small businesses, as well as arts and cultural organizations that was passed in the budget. And these grants could be used to cover various business costs that were incurred between March 1st of last year and April 1st of this year. This concludes payroll, rent, mortgage, any property, school taxes, insurance, and really any pandemic-related expenditures that were necessary. And our office can absolutely connect local businesses and organizations with this relief as well. Last month in Albany, both the Assembly and Senate passed the START Act. This is the Survivors of Trafficking Attaining Relief Together Act. And this bill was sponsored by Assemblymember Godfried and Jessica Ramos over in the Senate. And this bill increases protections for survivors of human trafficking, including sex and labor trafficking, by allowing them to clear the convictions that were related to their exploitation. Under the current law, survivors were only able to petition the court to clear convictions for prostitution, but not other offenses into which they were coerced into committing by their traffickers. This bill changes that and goes to the governor for his signature. Support's also consolidated in both houses behind a bill that Dick has introduced in the Assembly that will lower the allowable level of lead in the drinking water in schools all across New York State and will require testing every 3 years. This sets way tighter standards for the level at which school districts would be required to take remediation steps to remove lead in the drinking water. As just a couple priorities for the last 2 weeks, Dick has 3 bills that we're hoping to get passed. One is an expansion for Medicaid maternity. Pregnant women in the income window that's right above the normal Medicaid eligibility window right now can get Medicaid for 60 days after a pregnancy. This bill would expand that to 1 year to help reduce maternal mortality and morbidity, which I know is something that this board has been focusing on the past couple of months. We also have a bill that will cap the medical debt interest. And finally, a bill that we are carrying along with Senator Hellman over in the Senate that will require healthcare providers who administer immunizations to report those records to Department of Health or regional health organization to help ensure that patients and providers both have accurate vaccine histories that are easily accessible. So if you traveled internationally 8 years ago, got a bunch of shots and are traveling again next year, but you don't remember exactly what you got, this bill helps keep that all in one place that any of your doctors can access, so you know exactly what vaccines you've had, including, it's very helpful for kids to remember what they got when they had to go to college 10 years later. This will also help public health monitoring of vaccinations to really help public outreach efforts be much better targeted because of stronger records of who and where are getting vaccines. This applies to COVID and really any vaccine you can get. And I think I will leave it at that. And if there's any questions, be happy to take them.
Got a hand up from Mike Noble, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Lowell. I meant to ask this of Leslie Thrope earlier, just to make it clear for everyone, this rental assistance is not a loan. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so those people might be hesitant to go after this, thinking that, well, I'm going to owe this money anyway, why bother? But no, everybody should know that, no, this is a gift, gift from the government. Good. Thanks, man.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt, for Dick Godfrey, for the State Assembly? Not hearing any. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your move. Leslie, is RJ with us yet?
I don't see him, but I am going to go over a couple of things that our office has been doing.
Okay, well, let me properly introduce you. Leslie Escott from Senator Robert Jackson's office.
Thank you, of course. I am one of the community liaisons for Senator Jackson. And I want to mention the rent relief, emergency rent relief. I know that some of the speakers have already talked about it, but it is so important that you really spread out the word to communities, organizations, also to your tenants in buildings that are less able to find funding somewhere else because of their income. But this is a grant. It doesn't have to be paid back. For the last 2 days, we have been preparing for it because the phone calls are just coming in. So that is what we're going to be concentrating this week on. That is very important to our community, especially up in our district in the northern part, and also actually in the Upper West Side too. But of course, please pass that information. It's very important that everyone gets to take advantage of it because it is a 12-month payout and it is free. Some of the bills that Senator Jackson has been working on that are his bills is the S-1991 to end qualified immunity. That is for law enforcement to escape accountability for the harms they cause and the rights they violate from the citizens. The second one is a bill regarding education funding. It's the bill S-6296. It is to bring in, to provide funding for smaller classes. There is a need for smaller classes. And of course, also what we're also concentrating on is also the New York Health Act, which would establish a single payer system. So it provides universal health care for all New Yorkers. So there's a lot of bills out there and he is co-sponsoring many bills, so I'm not going to go into that as well. And I just want to mention that our food pantry has continued for the last 2 months already. We will be finalizing that particular food pantry up in the northern Manhattan, which we partnership with the West Side Against Hunger organization. So we're very grateful to them, and we should complete that at the end of June. I also urge any of our constituents in our district to call us if they need any assistance with unemployment, with any type of issues, whether it's Con Edison, whether it's medical. We have several experts in the office who can refer to an agency or an organization, or if you need a pro bono lawyer as well. For now, I think that's a lot. I know you have to move along. So if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Any questions for Leslie that pertain to Senator Jackson or the entire state Senate? I'm going to put Leslie on the hook for all 60 plus members. And you're off the hook, Leslie. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
We would normally hear from Controller Stringer's office, but Luke emailed and said he could not make it tonight. So I believe that concludes the elected officials portion of our program. So moving right along, I'm now going to turn the floor over to our illustrious and indispensable District Manager, Jesse Bodine.
Evening, everyone. As Lowell said, I'm Jesse Bodine, and the District Manager for Manhattan Community Ward 4. So I'm just going to touch on some highlights that happened over the last month that the office has been involved in. So I provided testimony to City Council Finance Committee on the need to restore the budgets for community boards. It's our understanding that the current cuts of approximately about $13,000 are currently still continuing into the FY22 budget as is now. I know council members, including the Speaker's office, and I'm sure Helen Rosenthal's office, are going to work hard to try to restore those. I also was participating in our monthly meetings with the temporary hotel shelter providers, along with Maria Ortiz from the Housing, Health, and Human Services Committee, and also attending the monthly street harm reduction meetings with Street Homeless Outreach and the Speaker's office. And I thank the Speaker's office for organizing those on a regular basis. I'm happy to announce some reopenings. So we sent this out already, but just to make sure that anybody did not get our newsletter, the Astro Dog Run will be opening on June 19th. All information about the dog run can be found on their new fabulous website, which is www.astrodogrun.com, all one word. And then the key parks will be opening shortly, hopefully by the end of June. All of the key parks should be opening, and we will be working out a way for new and interested folks to get keys for both the dog run and the key parks once they reopen. All of the June committees will be meeting at their normal times, at their regular times and dates. And I just wanted to take a moment to sadly announce that Peter Krokendalis of Kassira Consulting passed away this past weekend. For those of CB4 members who have had the chance to work with him, you know him as an honest and smart and positive person, and he will be missed, and our hearts and minds go out to his family. And I just want to say I really appreciate our staff here, Nellie Gonzalez, who's our Assistant District Manager, and Janine Pretente, who's our Community Board Associate. And they do a huge amount of work in compiling everything and getting this night ready, but then also just sending out our newsletter and getting all of that information out there to the public. So I want to thank them. And that can end my report.
Getting all of our letters out that we vote on and answering questions and going way above and beyond the call of duty. Thank you to Janine and Nellie. Jesse, can you tell us what the status of the CB4 office is?
I can. I also see a hand raised by one Joe Restuccia. So I'm gonna maybe, Joe, do you have a question for me?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, could we send a note of condolence to Peter's family since we've worked with them so long from our board?
Of course. So everybody knows there was a GoFundMe account created for his family. Donation has been made from our, in connection to our office. But yes, we can definitely do that. So our office, we are in our offices at 424 West 33rd Street. That is our new office. We have staff there every day of the week. We are, staggering our staff. So we have a small staff, but we are still very concerned about their safety. So we are staggering our staff, and there's very little overlap, but there is someone there every day of the week. We are not accepting walk-ins at this point, but we will be working on that schedule as we go forward.
All right, thank you, Jesse. The next thing on the agenda is my report, and I'm going to start by making a mockery or of myself and bastardizing a series of names, because our new board members have been appointed and they are with us here tonight. And I want to introduce them all and let them say a word or two about who they are and why they're here. But I have not met most of these people yet, so I'm going to screw up some of the pronunciations of their names. So I apologize in advance and I'll fix it next month. But one name that should be familiar to many of you, especially the BLP committee, is Theodore Arenas, who is joining us as a board member now. So Theodore, say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be a part of this community board. As you guys know, I've owned a couple of businesses, Rise Bar. I've been a part of the community for 20 years, and I'm very happy to be here to give my insight in the neighborhood and the perspective from business and the LGBTQ business in Manhattan. And that's pretty much it. And I look forward to working with all of you.
All right, thank you. Roberta Barnett is joining us now. Roberta.
Hi, my name is Roberta, or you can call me Bobby. I live in Chelsea, and I've worked in my career in affordable housing, and I'm really happy to be here. I really admire the work of CB4.
Thank you. Tina, I will make a mess of your name, so why don't you just introduce yourself?
That's fine. I go by Tina Nelson, so that makes it all easy.
I could have done that.
Yeah, I don't use the other names. It's just that that's my full legal name. So Tina Nelson will do. Yeah. So I was born and raised in New York, but I've been living in the community for 29 years now. I raised 3 kids here. And over the 29 years, there have been remarkable changes in this community, which I'm sure you all know about. So why am I here? I want to be part of future changes. So I'm quite thankful to have been appointed to be a member of the board. And I look forward to working hard and getting to know everybody on a one-to-one basis.
Thank you. Jesse Greenwald is joining us now. Jesse.
Hello, everybody. Also very happy to be here. I am a Chelsea resident. I am an attorney at Sullivan & Cromwell, former actor, still proud equity member, won't give that up. And have definitely, recognized that the city is hurting right now, and we all need to be pitching in whatever ways we can. And this is definitely one of the ways that I am hoping to improve our community and improve our city. And so it's an honor to be here and meet you all.
Thank you, Jesse. Candace Hewitt is a new member.
Yes, hi guys. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I've actually was back in the seats when we were able to do meetings and just as a visitor and getting interested in my community board. I've been a resident for Chelsea for 13 years, very active with my union as well. I'm a carpenter, so I can kind of help out with the logistics on that. But yeah, I'm just excited just to be a part of this community, and I've watched and learned of everybody, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So.
Welcome, Candace. Alice Wong joins us as of tonight. Alice, you.
Hi, good evening. I apologize for the background. I'm currently traveling at the moment, but it's a pleasure to meet all of you.
Okay, thank you, Alice. We have 2 other members who have joined us who I don't see on the attendees list. That would be Peggy, whose last name I'm going to mess up, and Rinal Vikram, whose name I probably just bastardized. And I apologize to the two of them in advance, but they weren't here, so they didn't hear me do that, and I'll get it right by next month when they join us. In addition to the new members, the only other thing I have to report is the ongoing working groups that continue to meet about our transportation hubs, the Port Authority Bus Terminal Working Group and the Empire Station Complex Working Group continue to meet on a regular basis with our partners at the federal and state level. And hopefully we will have updates from the Empire Station Complex group shortly, but I don't think there's anything to report as of yet. That being done, we are going to move into the business session. And we're going to start with the letters. We have one letter that was the subject of a public hearing from the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. I think JD called in on the phone. So JD, can you introduce this letter? JD? Joe, can you take it if JD can't?
Yeah, but JD, unmute your phone. Your phone's on mute.
*6 to unmute.
*6, yeah. Because we see your phone, but it's still muted. It's got the mute sign on it.
Yeah, I can't unmute your phone, JD, for you. It has *6 will unmute you.
Can't do it?
Maybe try
Okay.
from your computer, since we can also see you at your computer.
Well, the computer was having audio problems earlier. That's why I
no go.
went on the phone.
No go?
All right, Joe, can you take this then?
Sure. And JD, just shake your head if I'm doing something not following what's going on. So the Slaughterhouse, the Slaughterhouse project is a replacement development for the sanitation site on West 20th Street and the site M on 10th Avenue between 40th and 41st Streets. It will provide roughly 350 units of permanently affordable housing. And we have a ULIP in front of us tonight, which is extending the Hudson Yards district to include the Slaughterhouse site as a sub-district, to change the zoning, which is currently M15 manufacturing, to a high density residential zone, R10, and to designate the site as mandatory inclusionary housing. The proposal is a two-tower building development, one a hotel with roughly 680 rooms, and then a residential building with 350 rooms. The hotel cross-subsidizes the affordable housing. There's also a supermarket of roughly 11,000 square feet and 9,000 square feet of office space. In total, we have both 275 units of affordable housing and 75 units of supportive housing in this development. And they will be receiving services from Center for Urban and Community Services, CUCS. There is other issues here. The other issue here that's pretty major is that it's police parking. The site was a site of the old slaughterhouse, demolished in 1988, and has been used off and on as police parking. The city of New York, to make this RFP happen, required that there be police parking at this location. That parking is on the second and third floor of the building and houses a great number of specialized vehicles that are used in crowd control and anti-terrorism in Midtown. We have had a long discussion about design of the building, and that has gone back and forth with the Public Design Commission. We are close to having an approval there, and we're going to highlight especially that we are seeking to get final Public Design Commission approval. There was a discussion by the department, by the PDC, that this building should relate more to Hudson Yards as opposed to Hell's Kitchen, and that's the crux of the disagreement. We've gotten pretty far, but it's not quite settled yet. The buildings are roughly 650 feet tall. That's the the hotel, and 680 feet tall for the affordable housing. There is an open space. There's a plaza that is a complicated piece of open space just south of the building. Part of it owned by the building, part of it owned by Javits, part of it with a Port Authority easement on it. We formed a working group in order to work through all those agencies to work with the developer to come up with the integrated design for the plaza, because currently the plaza is only being treated on the portion the developer owns. And the building will be LEED Gold, fully sustainable, and absolutely a major development in our district. I would take any questions on this, and then I have just a few comments.
Does anyone have any questions for Joe? I see a hand. Jeffrey, and then
Marty, was that you?
Jeffrey first.
Thanks, Lowell. Joe, I have 2 questions. We're seeing another project where there's specifically perhaps zoning text to guarantee a grocery store. We've attempted that before and it has failed, at least 2 times in my recent memory in the past decade. So can you explain why we are guaranteed a grocery store here and weren't at the previous 2 developments we attempted to make this happen at, which was Gotham West and Site 7?
Yes, so there is no zoning text for the store. It's just part of the program of the building. And again, Jeffrey, it'll be the same thing, where this developer has gone out and sought to have a grocery store sign a lease. So we are again at the craps table of getting a grocery store. It's market driven.
But just to be clear, there's no, like, they could do the work to get a grocery store, not find one, and a grocery store won't open there, right?
This is analogous to Site 7, where in fact there was space set aside for a grocery store. There was a commitment by a grocery store. One fell out, another one came in, fell out again, and we did not get it. It was market driven.
I guess I'm just concerned that in our letter,
there is no zoning for this.
Okay, so but in our letter, in the summary of the project, we basically codify by stating it that there's going to be I believe we wrote 9,000 square feet of grocery. I really want there to be a grocery store because it's an absolute need. Putting in the letter that give us the teeth for it. I mean, we don't really have a real, is EDC making there be a grocery store there?
So the developer has voluntarily agreed as part of the community's requirements for there to be a grocery store. But again, it's subject to them securing a tenant. I think we need to basically amplify the language and note the 2 prior locations where we did not get it and note why they need to come up with this. Does that help?
I think that'd be a really good idea to just sort of show that this is not our first time requesting this, and the last 2 times really didn't materialize. Right. So otherwise, delighted to see this coming to life and thrilled to be voting on this tonight.
All right, thanks, Jeffrey. Marty.
I agree with what Jeffrey said. Thank you for all the information. Thank you for that very thorough letter. I have 2 questions. One is historical. In the beginning of the letter, you say nearly 300 units. In your discussion, you say 275 plus, was it 75 units? If I remember correctly, was the original promise of the Slaughterhouse site 300 units or was it 350? That's the question.
It was 155 and 75.
No, that wasn't the original promise. The original promise was something about a certain number of affordable housing units that we were promised in exchange for a park on 20th Street.
It was, there was 75 for the park on 20th Street and 155 on Side M. So that was originally 230. We've upped this by adding in the supportive housing, Marty.
And so now we have, instead of nearly 300, we have something like
we negotiated 230, and what's not clear here, we'll revise a letter to make it clear. It is a total of 350. We'll get rid of the words nearly. It is 350.
Thank you for that change. That makes good sense. And not nearly 300, 350, I think, is the beginning.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So my second question, a little bit more persnickety. I am so pleased to see that this is going to be a LEED's Gold building. The question is, why isn't it a LEED's Platinum building, which is a higher rank?
You definitely win the prize for persnickety. So noted.
Thank you. You don't have an answer. Is that what is?
You're being persnickety, and amazingly we got this far. That's all I'm going to note.
The reason for my question, I'll just finish with this. It's always good to push for the best environmental stuff, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm being serious now. So
just note for a moment, this is one of the most encumbered projects we have ever worked with. You have a 200-foot wide site by 125 feet deep. You have 2 towers on it. We are rezoning it. We are having police parking, a hotel, and a supermarket,
Impressive.
and a co-working space. So the fact that we even got to this moment is a miracle within itself, Marty. Just want to say that.
And with the leads,
With sustainability on top of it, right?
With the leads silver, I think it's great. I always want to push for a little more.
It's lead gold.
Gold. I'm sorry, I meant to say that. It's certified silver, gold, platinum. That's the secret. Thank you, Joe.
Christine.
Yes, I want to say, I remember when we had first this idea of saying, why don't we do a win-win and people have kind of a park and we can have more affordable housing. And Joe, how long ago was that?
242 years ago, it feels like.
But, so I want to say, I want to applaud the land use committee for, pulling together and getting more and more and more out of this site, which, if you all remember, is built over the Lincoln Tunnel below that.
Over two tubes for the tunnel.
Tunnel. So this is really, really complicated. And I think this is an extraordinary achievement, and we should be really, really proud of it. Thank you.
Just to know for everybody, this started out as a 4-page PowerPoint, and now we're at a Euler.
And if this has been going on for 242 years, you were on the board for about 40 years at that point, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, we started this, I guess, Christine, what year? You chair?
No, I believe 2012.
When Corey was elected, which was when?
2013.
2013.
The first time I remember going to him and say, no, we want to do, I was the chair at the time, and saying, we want to do win-win here. And this was like, oh my God.
And so for the new board members, it might be helpful. The board has been working with the Slaughterhouse site since 1987, when the building on its site was being demolished against our objections. So we're known for being persistent.
Right. When Corey was first elected, that was the trade of 20th Street for moving affordable housing to the park on 20th Street.
Right.
So it's been 8 years just to get to that point. And I'm sure Betty has more perspective on this. Betty.
Well, first, I want to congratulate the Land Use Committee and all the people who worked so hard. I think this is the most complicated project that I have ever read or proposal from the community board, and it is so clever and so positive. So I just wanted to say it's an amazing project. I have a couple of just biggish content things for clarification, and then I would like to, as you know, I like to be picky and edit, but I didn't have time today, so I'll send you some corrections and edits. But I thought that it would be good to explain up front that has been on the site this police parking lot, because you only get to that later, that the police got to do something with their cars. So that would be good to set the scene with that. And then perhaps it's in the letter, but Joe, when you said the hotel cross subsidizes the affordable housing, I didn't get that message. I don't. Is that a secret message or?
No. We need to make it explicit. I think we know it too well, and we forgot to add that.
Yeah, I think that is a very important element to put in. And just maybe this is a little picky, but on line 52, a community space facility, blah, 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 75 supportive housing units. Generally speaking, at least in my experience, one doesn't usually, at least I think, call a supportive housing place a community space facility. So
we
you don't have to
correct,
address
we will
it.
correct the language. Got it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. That's it for now, and I'll send you some more little things. But great, absolutely great accomplishment.
Thank you, Betty. Twee.
Thank you. I have a logistical question. I was surprised, one about the police parking that's going to be there. And then in noticing that there's a hotel, and then Rob is not.
We're getting feedback, Twee, can't hear you.
Like Rob, thank you.
Okay, no, it's fine. So I noticed that with the hotel and with the proposed supermarket, I didn't notice if there's any parking. Normally when you have towers or something, there's like underground parking, which you can't have because of the tunnels here. What happens when people want to go shopping? What happens with hotels and parking for them?
Christina's shaking her head because there's a parking prohibition in Hudson Yards, subject to a lawsuit. So no additional parking spaces can be built in Hudson Yards whatsoever. Isn't that correct, Christine?
Well, it's up to a certain amount, and I think it has been. But in this location, you have the Lincoln Tunnel under, so you can't have a parking, and it's people typically will take the subway.
And one of the problems here, Twee, is that it's actually adjacent to the Lincoln Tunnel queue, so you would have a very difficult time arranging. They're going to have to be, as part of the environmental work, they'll have to do drop-off lanes and things like that, but it will not be any parking available.
Okay, just something to keep in mind, even though I know you guys worked really hard.
Thank you, Twee. Rob Walker. Rob?
Now he has to unmute.
Yep. All right, let's go to Bert and then I'll come back to Rob again. Bert, go ahead.
Yeah, really quick. Joe, this is amazing. The project is so...
Hey, sorry guys, I didn't realize I was muted. Great job on the letter. Good work. Was there ever consideration given to Travis Center wanting to do a land swap with them for across the street for a larger piece of property for a bigger building and possibly more affordable housing?
We looked at every possibility here, including creating a whole district along 11th Avenue. The city of New York had no appetite. So that's why we ended up where we are. I would say this is like the 14th version of this project, Rob.
Okay, cool. And Jesse, if you can send me a link for the voting list.
Already done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Can you put yourself back on mute? And Bert, sorry for the interruption. Go right ahead.
It happens. Okay. So I just wanted to say an amazing project, really great. The site is so difficult. In addition, I think you might have mentioned that there's the ventilation in addition to the two tubes under. The ventilation has to be there also. It's just an amazing job. The whole board has worked on this for so long. It's really great. One question. The sculptures that I know you're aware of, that you have a couple buried a few places, are any of those sculptures of the cows, the animals that were off there, going back on site?
So let me just back up for a moment. This is called the Slaughterhouse site. It was a slaughterhouse, a full block front between 39th and 40th on the west side of 11th Avenue. It was designed like a Renaissance palazzo, and part of the actual building facade was a limestone sign that went about 200 feet, 150 feet long, and monumental steer heads and cow heads. You see one of them in the park on West 23rd Street.
Right.
The community board was instrumental in having those preserved and salvaged when the building was demolished. As part of the work, we have talked about this very recently, we're seeking to have some of that sculpture, which my office, Clinton Housing, was able to access from the Landmarks Preservation Warehouse when it went out of business, and they've been in storage since that time, that they will be incorporated into the open space plaza. That's one of the reasons we set up this open space working group, in order to try to bring some of the actual remnants of the historic building that was there back to its location.
Thanks, Joe, because that makes it even more spectacular and amazing. Thank
And
you.
I think we'll note that in the letters, because we did that was out of there too, right?
Thank you.
All right.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Go, JD.
You've been lying in wait this entire time, letting Joe handle all of this.
I just want to say one thing. There are a lot of people running for mayor, and they're all worried about affordable housing and people who don't have homes. This community board has created 350 permanently affordable units. this is just extraordinary. Some of the comments, I understand the letter's not perfect yet, but let's just step back a moment. And 275 and 75 units run by a very sterling outfit that helps formerly homeless people. This is just a terrific accomplishment. There's still work to do. But it's just quite something, I think, to be proud of. And I know the mayor's candidates are calling Jesse and say, how can we do this as well? Well, you just persist. And I would give credit to Corey Johnson, our council member, who helped out with this. He deserves credit for this. This is an accomplishment. And also for EDC helped out, and City Council Land Use was also, but especially the committee that worked so hard on this. And I would say one more thing, the design of the building, if Dan Kaplan is listening, it's a wonderful, handsome building. And affordable housing can be well built and look terrific. So that's all.
Thank you, JD.
And I'm not changing a word in the letter except for what Betty wants. Then we'll change it.
All right. Thank you, JD. Dale.
Quick question to Joe and JD, just to enlighten us a little bit, because I know there's a developer involved, and the developer has been very accommodating to all the very intense constraints that this site has, everybody's outlined, and also our demands for affordable housing. So can you color that? Can you add some color to like the developer's participation and ability to work with us in this regard, Joe and JD?
Sure. Good idea.
Guys, let me just, if you're gonna, is it worth putting in any history about how many developers we've gone through till we got to this point?
I mean, actually, I'm sorry, to clarify, I did not mean to say I want a new paragraph in the letter. I just want, for our own enlightenment, because as JD pointed out, getting permanently affordable housing is so hard. Like, what can you tell us all, and especially for the new members here, like about this particular developer's work with us in that regard, to getting on board with
I think we should probably know I think it's good to note it for the letter too, because this went through many programs. There was no hotel here. It was a dormitory and affordable housing. And there was no supportive housing. That was the developer agreeing and EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, fighting tooth and nail against it and eventually coming over to our side for supportive housing. This project really has been shaped by the community board and the council member constantly pressing on how to do something better and how to make it work better. And then finally agree, and we've increased the height of the building. We didn't want to, we did that too. There's a lot of compromise here. So for example, it was very frustrating when we got to the final version and the Public Design Commission, because this is how this is a lease, a 99-year lease to a developer. So it stays in city ownership and must go through the process of the Public Design Commission. They decided they wanted a super modern building, which was against anything we had dealt with for the past 5 or 6 years. So it's that kind of stuff. I think we should put a little bit of color in there to give some history, Dale, just to note that we've all worked together really to come to a conclusion that everyone is very happy with.
Thanks.
That's a good suggestion, Dale. Absolutely. I'd also say one thing. There was a high level of respect from the final developer and the architect to the committee. It was just the same with McGraw Hill. When they came to the committee asked very good questions, was respectful, and I think developed a relationship where they respected the board and the committee, and they finally came to our point of view.
I think we've gone through like six or eight project managers at EDC on this one.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you everyone for the questions. Thank you, Joe and JD, for your work on this.
One more note.
Yeah.
I only learned tonight, because at our presentation, this was not explicit, that the supportive housing is not integrated throughout the building. It's on floors 6 to 13, and then the rest of the affordable housing on floors 14 to 57. That had not been presented, and I'm going to propose an amendment that we ask for it to be integrated throughout the building, because that's how we do stuff in Board 4, people should not be living in separate parts or wings of a building. Does that sound okay in general?
I have one question about that though, Joe. I mean, I understand the logic. JD, 1 second. I understand the logic behind that, Joe. But for the supportive housing, since they need different services, is that their logic behind clustering it?
The services go to the apartments.
So I think we can find out first, Joe, because they need that supportive housing office and near the supportive housing people. So can we explore that first?
I'm going to note for a moment, as a practitioner, the answer is no. The office being close to people is not the issue. The quality of the service is the issue. And we have many buildings that we have done, their units are integrated throughout the building. It's not about proximity to an office. It's about quality services being delivered.
Okay.
And I believe this is a little bit of a leftover idea that the poorest people live in one section versus the less poor people someplace else. And that's just not right.
And add that to the letter if that's the way it works in practice. I was just wondering, you know, like JD said, if they need to be near the support systems. And if you're saying no, let's add that to the letter. All right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, JD. Thank you to the many members of the
committee
of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee over the years that have worked on this to get us to this point.
And Transportation Committee helped out. Betty, everybody, a lot of people participated in this.
Because we work as a team, because we're stronger as a team.
Do we need a roll call there?
No.
We do need a roll call because this relates to a ULURP, but we are going to do it as part of our regular roll call at the end, and I'll explain how we're going to do that when we get there, Christine. Let's move on to the Chelsea Land Use Committee. Paul and Betty, please break out items 2 and 5, since those also, I think, need roll calls. And then, you know, tell us about what's going on here. Betty, Paul, who's ever going to take it?
What are we?
There,
what letter is this?
Betty's first.
Yeah, this is letter number 2. This is the hotel text amendment. And the bottom line is we're recommending approval of the proposal from city planning with 2 conditions. And I went back to 2 letters that the community board wrote, one in July 2018 and one in February 2021, so that we could be consistent in our recommendations. And our recommendations reflect our positions from those. What city planning is proposing, as I said before, is to have more consistent zoning framework for new hotels. And currently there's special permits that have different findings, and not everybody has a special permit in each district or each area. So this would have a kind of universal replacement of the existing special permits except in M1 districts. And the idea is to prevent conflicts with the nearby uses and to avoid hampering future development. And we're recommending that the special permit findings be more specific, and they, in regard to the hotel, their access, orientation, landscaping, internal space provided for trash and linen deliveries, and they should not cause undue vehicular congestion. These are our more specific recommendations for the special permit. And the one thing that we did say about a phrase shouldn't reduce the availability of nearby parking. Dale, Christine, Paul, and I decided not to put that phrase into the letter, that it's not, at this point, it's not appropriate. And we also have a specific recommendation that the findings should include a measure to avoid undue concentration of hotels within a 500-foot radius. This is also from an old letter that we did. The city planning proposal continues to exclude public purpose hotels such as emergency shelters for the new special permit requirement. We are on record previously for opposing that exclusion. And we brought this up again with city planning when they came to the land use committee, and they were adamant they would not change that. So we did a twist on it and said the special permit should be for uses that are hotels that are non-emergency, such as shelters, supportive housing, affordable housing. Thanks to Paul for that idea. And so that is in this letter. And we also urge city planning to work with Community Board 4 to develop a comprehensive plan for the siting of social services, shelters, supportive housing, and affordable housing. So bottom line summary, we agree with the proposal. The citywide proposal should include more specific findings for the new special permit and require a special permit for non-emergency public purpose hotels. Any questions? Oh, so let me see.
James was first, Betty.
Pardon me?
James has the first question.
James. Okay, James.
Hi, Betty. Great letter. I was just wondering if it would be taken as a friendly amendment. You know, we even have, I think, a project that's come before the community board where hotels are now doing this thing where they're double flagging, sometimes triple flagging. And what that means is, you know, they'll take a building and separate it out into 3 different names, 3 different brands. So rather than use the term hotels, I'm just wondering if you might consider hotel rooms, because the really isn't the concentration, isn't the concern, you know, the number of rooms that are being created. And Joe's shaking his head, but
well, we'll have to think about that. Okay, James.
Hotel is a defined term in the zoning text. You have to use the word.
I mean, could we use both?
It is actually in the text. It says what a hotel is, and then it refers to that definition. So that's why you have to use it, James. And by the way, most hotels are multiple flags. It doesn't matter from the zoning point of view. It's all a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned
in one building.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that it doesn't address the ultimate concern. I hear what you're saying about the text of the zoning regulations. It's just isn't our concern. You know, look, if you have one hotel, it's a boutique hotel with 100 keys. That's very different from a mega tower with 1,000 keys. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
okay, I get what you're saying, James. We'll meditate on it. Okay,
that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Who's next?
Blake is next.
Okay.
Walking through the letter, Betty, my one question on this one was if we were confident that the definition of emergency in the text was defined enough such that something like, you know, what I think is arguably an emergency of, you know, residents without permanent shelter, you know, if the definition of emergency was well stipulated enough that, you know, there wouldn't be a loophole around, you know, other emergency definitions.
Okay, we'll look into that a little bit further. I mean, basically, the city is contending that they had this emergency because of the pandemic, and the congregate housing had to quickly, you know, practically overnight, go into hotels that were empty, and, you know, then people had to go there so they don't spread COVID to each other in group rooms. So we can look and see if we need to tweak the words emergency and non-emergency then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Cat.
Thank you, Blake. First, let me say I wasn't at the meeting where this letter was approved, and wow, what a job. Thank you so much. It's a great letter. Blake's question about non-emergency and its meaning was one of my questions, so I don't need to repeat that. But another vague term, and you mentioned it in your presentation, is undue concentration around the 500 foot. It's also a vague term. The not asking for a change so much as consideration. Do those terms need better definition?
Okay, we'll take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Katie is next.
Hey, so just two little edits, Betty. There's the unusual word botel in line 31, which I think is supposed to be hotel.
No, botel is a word that's in the zoning resolution.
Another zoning text.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And then also you just need a space before the word proposed in line 19. So just little, that's all on the.
Okay.
But then I was just a little unclear, and maybe this goes to what others were just saying. So what exactly is the letter saying?
The letter says that we approve.
No, I'm sorry, but specifically, what is the letter saying about the emergency use? I mean, I know we sort of said this is what we want, and they said no.
Okay, so we were suggesting in the letter that non-emergency, whether it's a shelter or supportive housing, in other words, not when you're not having a pandemic, you're not having to transport people from congregate housing, you just are going to have some facility, and it's not an emergency facility, it's just a facility. So that's the idea. So the idea is that city planning says basically they don't want to have a special permit because that for these public purpose hotels, because then it takes a long time. You have to submit the findings for the special permit. But for other facilities, we're suggesting you could have time to do a special permit.
For non-emergencies.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so then I see the issue about just defining better emergency. Okay. Got it, thank you.
All right, thank you, Katie. Hector?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. It was a really terrific letter, very thorough. My question is, and it may be out of left field, but at what point can we ask the question about local hiring practices when it comes to rezoning and allowing new hotels to be put up? Would that be appropriate in this kind of letter, or would that be something to be taken up at a later date?
Well, in terms of zoning, local hiring practices don't fit for that, like a zoning text amendment. I do know that sometimes when we have a development proposal or something, we add that in. Just it's not a zoning kind of thing.
But Betty, one of the purposes of the special permit, Hector, is to allow public comment and raise those kinds of issues during the public comment of a special permit. So we would expect to have that raised every single time for hotels.
Well, I guess that's a good solution, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, that when we come in on the special permit to review the new hotel that's proposed, we could put in the hiring practice issue. So that's, thank you, Hector, and thank you, Joe.
All right, that's all the questions you have, Betty.
Okay.
So can we move on to the next
Yeah,
letter?
I'm on for number 3. Hold on. Okay, number 3 is the proposed storefront and signage changes to Starrett Lehigh Building at 601 West 26th Street. This is a letter that's addressed to LPC because that building is an individual landmark in the West Chelsea Historic District. And we recommend approval for the proposed changes. And we have said that they don't detract from the building, the character, and are warranted to its existing use. Verizon is located here, and it's kind of an ugly space that they have. So the applicant's goal is to make the outside more attractive. It's a little complicated because there's a mezzanine that Verizon is using. The solution varies from the approved master plan, but it's kind of in the spirit of the approved master plan, and it's intended to be interim. And we also said that, and they say that this infill storefront is similar to the master plan. And once this Verizon storefront treatment and Verizon's gone, that they would go back, they would intend to go back to the master plan treatment. And we have strongly recommended that there's a blank wall that would be created, and that a mural or historic local images be put on this blank wall. I think this would enliven that blank wall and could really be a plus for that area. And then there's a proposal from the applicant for shifting the signage. This is basically to shift it to what they now consider the main entrance on 26th Street. The sign would be larger, and then there's a market entrance that is east of that, and that would be the smaller lettering for the sign. So basically, that's where we're at with this, recommending approval with some suggestions. Any questions?
Any questions about letter number 3? All right, letter number 4.
Letter 4 is me. This is another LPC application. There is a house on West 22nd Street that currently has a what we call a traditional tea room on the tea porch on the back of the house. The applicant is looking to add a second level with a railing so you could access from the 3rd floor. We feel like it is not in conformity with the historic row house form and the character defining features of the Chelsea Historic District, and that we think that this bulk and mass would overshadow the kind of modest 2-story tea porch additions of the block. So we are recommending a denial of that.
Any questions about letter number 4? All right, Paul, you get 5.
I get the next one. So again, this is another zoning text amendment. The mayor is pushing through all these zoning text amendments before he leaves office. So we're going to see a lot of these in the next month. This zoning text amendment is to improve accessibility at MTA stations. Blake, is your hand up on the last issue or on this issue? Okay, thanks. So the zoning text amendment would increase accessibility for disabled people to MTA stations. As we heard in public session and the public hearing, we're woefully behind in providing access to our public transit stations. So this is a method to allow zoning provisions to provide easements on properties that are being developed that are above subway stations. And then it also allows for, if you're within a central business district, you can pay for significant improvements within a subway station, and then receive zoning bonuses and relief, most notably floor area ratio increases. So keeping in mind that this is a citywide zoning text amendment and it has to address issues outside of our community board, we wanted to raise issues that we feel impact our neighborhood, but could fit into a citywide framework. So we have basically 4 major points we want to raise in this letter. One is that there's language about zoning lot combinations. So the zoning bonus could be to a zoning lot. One of the things we've witnessed is the combination of building lots into bigger zoning lots. And we feel like the additional bonuses should only be on the building, only on the building, and not on a larger oversized zoning lot that could extend a block or a half a block further out. We were concerned about the standardization of bonuses. It's very vague as to how they define the up to 20% FAR and what qualifies for a bonus and what does not qualify for a bonus and what those bonuses would be. So we want to see some standardization of that language. We want to see some definitions around what is considered a meaningful improvement. You know, adding bump strips at the edge of a platform may not be as significant as adding in an elevator. And so what standardization is included in that, as well as just not simply beautifying something, making that a meaningful improvement such that they would qualify for zoning bonuses. The fourth issue is to make sure that the developers have to maintain up to MTA standards. So if you think about elevators going in and out of buildings, those are different capacity, different standards than an elevator going in and out of a subway station. So we want to make sure that those elevators and any access points are up to MTA standards, and that they are maintained up to those standards as well. And then the fifth point is that, and this is where it gets tricky with the citywide stuff, is that we make sure that we respect special districts. So we have the Clinton Special District that would definitely be impacted by some of these, but we also have the Hudson Yards District, where even though they have a brand new station there, we don't want them to come back to us in 10 years and say, oh, we can make this improvement to the 7th stop on 34th Street, so we want more FAR for Hudson Yards. So we want to make sure that they respect our special district constraints. So that's an overview. I saw Blake, Marty, and then Joe.
Before you get to
Hold on.
1 second.
Hold on. This is also, this is a Clinton.
Yeah, there's one
Can you hear
thing.
me?
Before you get there, JD, give me 1 second. The one thing I want the board to be aware is this is coming up at Borough Board this month as well. So whatever we vote on here, I will be carrying to Borough Board, and the letter that comes out of Borough Board, which is made up of the chairs of all of the 12 community boards in Manhattan. I will be carrying whatever the results are of this letter and asking that they be included in that letter as well. JD, go ahead.
Yes, this is also a Clinton Hell's Kitchen land use letter. In fact, Hell's Kitchen land use wrote the letter, and Paul did an excellent summary of the Chelsea land use and the Clinton land uses considerations. Transportation, Christina Dale also contributed to this letter. I think, and I know Paul and Betty agree with me, we're very much in favor, and Lowell, you must emphasize that, in making transportation accessible to all New Yorkers. We're very much in favor of that. We do not feel, however, that this is the total solution and it needs to be tweaked, but we're very much in favor of helping all New Yorkers have access. And I know Paul has emphasized that, as well as Betty.
Yeah, and
So
thank you,
that should be kept in
JD.
mind.
Thank you, JD, for reminding us of the excellent writing skills of the Hell's Kitchen land use creative and writing team. So I appreciate that. And I will point out, the only reason I'm actually presenting is because JD's been having internet connections. JD could have presented equally as on this as me. So thank you, JD.
All right, now before we go to the questions, I have a question for you guys based upon what I presented to Borough Board last month. One of the points that was raised at Borough Board was that the bonuses, they should be, there are different bonuses that developers can take advantage of. And we wanted to make sure that the affordable housing bonus was played before they played the accessibility bonus. Is that included in this letter, or was there a reason that it was not?
Joe,
It will be,
not yet.
It will be included. It will be included. It was part of the discussion. It just hasn't been fleshed out and written yet, but it certainly will be included in the letter.
All right, so the point is that you've got to take advantage of any bonus to create affordable housing before you take advantage of a bonus to create accessibility. Because the representation I made to Borough Board is that while we believe in accessibility to transportation for all New Yorkers, it has been the position of this board that affordable housing is our #1 issue, and that has to be addressed first.
And Joe will speak more on this a little, but yeah, we did talk at the Hell's Kitchen land use meeting about sort of stacking bonuses.
Right.
And that housing should be first, and then anything else above that should be within the parameters. So
right. That's what I told Borough, and I wanted to make sure it was in the letter. Blake, I'm going to go to Joe first, just because I think he's going to follow up on this point, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I got a few things here. First, I'm sorry I was going to review this very carefully because I'm dealing with some emergencies to Clinton housing. So the phrase, Paul, be aware, it's not building lots, it's tax lots. That's what you mean, right?
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so thank you.
So,
I actually asked you that earlier, so thanks.
Yeah. So it is definitely tax lots. I think the biggest issue we have here with this thing that Paul, sorry, Lowell has raised is that this zoning for accessibility bonus is zoning for accessibility instead of our existing suite of bonuses. So that's a big issue, especially in the special zoning districts. Clinton has had a affordable housing bonus since 1973. It used to be a park bonus. We took it out of there in order to have only affordable housing. Only 3 blocks in Clinton, 8th Avenue, West Side between 42nd and 45th, have a second bonus, which is for theater rehabilitation in the theater subdistrict in Midtown. So we have to make it very clear, Lowell, we'll have to write this carefully, that this cannot be, you do this bonus instead of the affordable housing. And also the compromise with that theater bonus was a huge issue. So that's another item here. We have to figure out how to play that in. One piece I want to note is the Hudson Yards station on West 34th Street. That is in a zone that has an FAR of 33. The idea that we're talking about any kind of further bonus to a zone that's an FAR of 33 is like criminal. And we should note the zoning lots that surround that are the entire western and eastern rail yards. So imagine a 20% bonus on a block, like double blocks, like 3 blocks. That's insane. I've actually had to talk to the city council land use, and if we recommend taking out that station, they will take it out because it is fully accessible and was built to purpose just the last couple of years. And then the last thing, Paul, I want to ask you from your and Betty's committee, the radius issue of the 1,500 feet. Is there any reason we're supporting that as opposed to a normal block of 800 feet in Manhattan? Because it seems as if you're leapfrogging not one avenue, but 2 to apply this bonus to, especially if the zoning law language stays in.
My impression on that was that they had provided us the 1,500 foot from the central business district, and it really doesn't come into it comes down into Chelsea to about 13th Street, I think, and it's between 6th and 8th Avenues. And Betty and I walked those blocks, and the potential sites for increased FAR, it wasn't. I don't know how feasible it was for many of them to apply for it. And the impacts we were more concerned about, say, on the west side of 8th Avenue, as you get into historic Chelsea and into Penn South and those places. And in those areas, this zoning text amendment would not apply to those blocks.
So conversely, in Hell's Kitchen, it applies to the blocks almost entirely and will push the radius to west of 9th Avenue. And I think I would suggest that we push that from 1,500 to 800 foot radius in order to keep it within those high density blocks and not push it further west. That's a real issue going forward. So imagine it's 1,500 feet tall, but it's along West 34th Street and it goes west of 9th Avenue.
Yeah,
that would put residential buildings at risk here.
Yeah, I see a point, and and we didn't really discuss that at Hell's Kitchen land use, so I'm kind of wrestling with it now. I think we need to find a way to address it. Yeah, let's figure out some language that we can do there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring it up now because the radius issue I think is going to have the biggest impact on how this bonus gets applied.
And the issue is, when we did the conversion policy recommendation, same thing. It's like, where do they come up with these numbers, 500 and 1,500?
Out of their hat.
You're right. No, yeah, exactly. But maybe we look at language like 1 block or 2 blocks or something like that.
Right.
And maybe just,
well, we have to express it in feet because again, this is a citywide letter, but our concerns are local. And all of our blocks are pretty much 800 by 200. So I think
but most of the central business districts are also here and in Midtown East. So a little bit downtown, but that's, yeah, okay. I think like if one of our blocks is 800 feet, let's do 1,500 to 1,800. We can change that. We can.
Okay.
All right, Joe, you good?
Yeah.
And Joe, can you send some proposed language on the special district that you're concerned about?
Yeah. I made the notes as we spoke.
Thank you.
All right, Blake, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for walking through this letter as well. And I have two small questions. One was about the day-to-day maintenance of these accessibility modifications. You know, for example, who would be responsible for an elevator that is developed to improve accessibility? And, you know, I was a little unclear based on the language in that construction and maintenance standard, you know, about who would be responsible for that.
So the way they presented it to us is that if a developer puts in something, the developer would be responsible for it. So that's why we have language in there saying there should be windows of opportunity for repairs. And if it's not repaired, the MTA comes in, makes the repairs, and then bills the developer. So the current zoning text amendment language is to have developers build. So this is more for, if you think about a site that's sitting right on top of a subway station, and they have an elevator that goes inside of their building. They don't want MTA to build that elevator. They want to build that elevator. So, but if they do build that, they need to maintain it. And if they don't maintain it, MTA has the right to go in, make the repairs, and then bill them for those repairs. That's
And the MTA holds escrow for all these agreements, and they have self-help, meaning that they can literally say, we have the escrow, we're spending the money, too bad.
And does that responsibility also include, you know, non-repair work, you know, cleaning, for example, of an elevator like that?
It depends upon the maintenance agreement, but if they've built it, they pretty much are responsible for maintaining it, yes.
Then the second question was just about hours of operation. You know, is there any kind of stipulation about having these elevators, for example, accessible to the public, you know, at hours that are convenient to the public rather than, you know, when the building lobby, for example, might be open?
They're accessible from the public side of the building and the street. They're not accessible from the buildings.
Great, thank you.
No, but that's a good point. Let me just raise that, follow up on that, is that I think we should add something, because some entrances which are privately developed are, you know, open until 1 o'clock in the morning, not open 24 hours a day. So we should include an amendment here which says that the hours and of operation should be consistent with the station, not with the building, or should not be an option for the building to choose.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point, Blake.
Thank you,
Right,
Blake.
but it should stay consistent with whatever the station hours are, just like
Yeah.
that. So it's,
Yeah.
so you can't make any excuse.
Right.
Great, thank you, Marty.
Paul, the conversation that you just had about who's responsible for what, if you would take a look at line 85 and 6, which says maintenance should be controlled by the MTA, not the building maintenance crews. That led me to some confusion, and you might want to revisit that line to make it clear that the developer is responsible for the maintenance and not the MTA, which is what you just said.
Yeah, Marty, if you remember, like in Times Square, the stations actually have a placard that say this was developed by X, Y, or Z company, and the maintenance and repair of the station is, I mean, this portion is responsible by the developer. That is part of what the MTA does. So I think we just need to make it explicit, because that's how it works today.
Right. My comment is just about that line, which doesn't really follow what you're saying.
Right.
We'll clarify that. Thank you. Thanks, Marty.
Chris LeBron.
Evening, everyone. So I had to go into my notes from the HK Land Use Committee meeting regarding this, and I jumped into the YouTube video as well. We did speak about our concerns with the 1,500-foot radius. Joe explicitly did that, and you were in on this also, Paul. And we had chimed in on this, and we did ask for it to be a city block measured in 800 feet.
Great. Then we'll change it.
Thank you.
That's it on this one, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for, and JD and like everybody, thanks.
All right, I just want to, just so everyone is clear, there are 3 letters here that relate to zoning or land use that will need roll calls. I will explain it when we get to the roll call, how we're going to deal with this. but I also want to acknowledge, because these are complicated letters. JD, you wrote letters number 1 and 5, is that correct?
Yeah, number 1 I wrote, the other one, Betty and Paul added stuff, Christine added stuff. That was a combined effort.
All right, well, take a bow. And Betty, are you primarily responsible for letter number 2?
Yes, number 2 and number 3.
Well, you can take a bow for number 2 then, because those are the complicated ones, and I want everyone to know who understands this.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the ELP committee. Frank and Bert, the only comment I want to make before you guys get started is the number of items on your committee looks normal again, which I take is a very good sign for our city.
Not for us.
Not only does the number look normal, Lowell, I've been walking the streets and noticing, not on every restaurant or bar, but on many have, and Christine, please bear with this because I know it's illegal. They have the wall boards outside, more than, not adjacent to the wall, which is what they're supposed to have, but they have them right out on the sidewalk saying, we are hiring.
That's true.
They're hiring, and then they'll list 5 or 6 different occupations. That, to me, when I saw that for the first time, I think about 10 days ago. It brought a great smile on my face and a warmth to my heart. We are hiring. I hope they're paying well. And they're not saying, oh, high unemployment benefits are keeping people out of it. Let them pay good wages. They'll get people. Anyway, on BLP, we have a bunch of letters. They're all the usual. There's nothing complicated like zoning that we've just dealt with. So I'd like to bundle them. If there are any questions, Frank or I will take them, but otherwise we're going to bundle them.
Are there any questions on letters 6 through 15? Marty, go ahead.
I have a generalized question. When I read through these letters, I always say that the committee has sweated over it, and anything that I think of, you folks have probably already thought of. Would you share? There are a number of these items that have fairly large venues. Do you do anything special when you have large venues, and would you help me understand that?
So several of the largest ones, Marty, have been previously licensed, like item 13, the Gatsby Mansion, was previously a music club. So if something big has been previously licensed and hasn't been a source of complaints, we take some comfort from that. Other things like item 15, several floors at the Time Warner building is sort of corporate space of Deutsche Bank. So they're really licensing all of their conference room floors to serve alcohol in, but it's a catering license. So they're limited to serving to their employees and invited guests, and they can't sell to the general public. So I think many of the big spaces on here fall into that category. The Javits Center, we actually spent a lot of time on. 4 of us went to an actual physical site visit, the first one we've done in about 14 months. We had them do a sound study. So we did spend a lot of time on that one, given its size.
And that's the one that has live music. So I'm glad to hear you did a sound study.
Well, we didn't do the sound study. We asked them, when they first came to us, Marty, they hadn't had a sound study. So we asked them to do it. And the way we proceed is, we meet the second Tuesday of the month. So they have 3 weeks or so to do a study, because we also always ask them, we want the study before full board so we can read it and look at the recommendations. And in particularly in the Javits Center, they came up with some recommendations and we incorporated the recommendations into the stipulation. It doesn't show that in the letter here because it was done actually by Frank and the lawyer and Nellie yesterday over the phone and consenting to each other. Yes, we'll do it. We'll do it. implement the recommendations of the acoustical study.
Thank you for the explanation.
Joe, your hand was up, but is that still from last time? Okay, Tina.
I have a question. Each of these letters refer to a signed stipulation, and I was glimpsing through the material. Forgive me if I missed it, but what does this stipulation provide that each letter refers to?
All right, Frank, why don't you explain how the whole process works for BLP?
Sure. The entire form that's attached to the letter are stipulations. So all 6 or 7 pages of those questions where they answer no, yes or no are considered stipulations. And then in many cases, we add additional ones on page 7, which are typed in specifically for each applicant. But the entire form goes to the SLA, and we say we recommend they deny the license unless all of these terms, which include hours and music and all sorts of other things, be made terms of the license. So it's really that whole, everything that's attached to that little cover letter are the stipulations.
So there's not a separate form.
No,
Okay.
that is the form.
Oh, okay, thanks, sorry.
No, and also I'll add, Tina, is that they may come to us, what you see finally is a result of, let's use the word negotiation, between us and them. Because they may come to us with certain hours and then we say da, 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 and they agree to changing the hours. So the hours you see are not necessarily the hours they came to us with.
I will say this for all of the new members, except the new member who knows how this works already. You know, we will be doing orientations and you will get a sense of how this works in better detail before we ask you to vote on this stuff again.
With that explanation that we just heard, would the committee talk a little bit about how many of these stipulations actually make their way through into the final documents that the provider gets, the applicant gets?
I mean, we like to think it's all of them. Unfortunately, we do not get what the SLA actually does unless we file a FOIA request, which is something I think Brad Hellman was sponsoring legislation to try to change so that the actual terms of liquor licenses are available to the public and us. My sense is that, you know, most or all of them do make it in, but it's the rare applicant who backs away from the stipulation and says, oh no, I agreed with you, but it's not on my liquor license. More often they say, we forgot about it, or we didn't know we were violating it. But very few people, you know, when there are problems, say, you know, forget about it. We're just, you know, reneging on our agreement with you.
And there was just recently an applicant who came before our committee asking for changes in their method of operation. And the changes they were asking for, they were actually doing, what you might use the word illegally. And they were asking us to legitimize it. And we said, no, we're not, we can't trust you. And 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm not sure of the time, Frank, was it 2 or 3 weeks later?
2 or 3 days.
Quick, they were shut down by the SLA. We had a sense they might be under investigation.
Mr. Restuccia?
Yeah, just for the new members, this whole idea of stipulations and writing things into the method of operation came from Community Board 4. We did it informally for years, and then the SLA actually adopted what we did, having a signed stipulation. And now that stipulation gets embodied into the actual license. We're the group that started it. So that's why we've been very successful in making it happen.
Okay, any other questions about items 6 through 15? Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Frank. Transportation planning, items 6 through 19, Christine and Dale.
Yes, I'll take that. And Dale obviously has we have worked together to participate in that. On the letter to 615 10th Avenue, this is a request to change parking regulation to give a delivery space to target. And we would like to add two friendly amendments which came after we wrote the letter, which is to ask them to install protection for the trees, and also propose to review the schedule of the deliveries in 6 months. We have asked and we have obtained a target as agreed to reduce their delivery time, their delivery windows, such that they do not interfere with the schools. There are two very large schools there on the block, so that there is no obstruction at that time. So with those amendments, do we have any question on this one?
Any questions about anything in letters 16 through 19?
Well, no. I'm going to mention something on 8th Avenue.
That was just 16?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. 17 then. Any
So
questions? No questions on 16. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. 17, as is the letter, the gentleman who came to make a request between their block, between 33rd and 33rd and 34 is going to be completely occupied by the frontage of the block by a bike share. And I think it would be appropriate to recommend that the length of the bike share be limited to 100 feet, which is half of the block, because there are a need for access, and we can propose that the other 100 feet be located above on 35 or 36 or 37. So we'd like to make this amendment based on the request from that person. Number 18, Sarah Appleton has been working.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Yes.
On 17?
Wait, I would like Sarah to introduce that letter.
I have a question on 17 though, the one
I'm sorry, yes.
They removed almost, I would say 95% of the bike share that was on the west side of 8th Avenue in front of Farley, now Moynihan. And so I assume that this placement in that full block frontage is to take that up, which was almost a super block sized amount of city bike share. So we have a massive transportation center with almost no bike share access.
Oh, no, they're putting it back in front of the Farley.
No further comment. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and so where's Sarah? Is Sarah visible?
Hi, my video is not really working, but I'm
Oh,
here.
okay, Sarah, you want to give a little background on this letter, which is yours and all your work?
Sure. So as not new members on this board may remember, a couple months back, we'd sent a letter to DOB with a number of kind of questions and concerns relating to the proliferation and prolonged duration of scaffolding, otherwise known as sidewalk sheds on city sidewalks, and kind of the resultant harm they have on pedestrians, transportation, business, general economic life, quality of life, the list goes on and on. Long story short, DOB came and gave us a briefing and presented to the committee at our last meeting. We heard about, in particular, their long-standing sheds program that they explained they've started since about 2020, pretty recently, shortly before COVID, as well as some changes to fines as the main efforts they touted that they've been trying to put forward to try to reduce, particularly long-term sheds. We appreciate that. We have more questions. We have more ideas for how, they could still better exert oversight over sheds. And so that's what this letter is. It's essentially a series of information requests relating to some of the things we started to discuss in our committee conversation with DOB representatives, and also particularly calling out a number of long-standing sheds, 5+ years in our district, and asking them if they've contacted the properties as part of their ongoing efforts, or what other actions they have or can take to address those particular sheds.
Great. And then we have a letter to.
I have a question.
Yes, sorry.
I had my hand raised. Sarah, I think this is great. I had a question about your appendix. That paper doesn't seem to sort it in any particular way, specifically a permit expiration date, applicant business name or address or house number. Do you think it might be a good idea to sort it by permit expiration dates to highlight that?
More than happy to accept that. That was
No,
just
but wait a minute. It's sorted because I checked on it. It's sorted by when it was applied first.
I see.
Which
The one
essentially
column-
tells you, right. Which essentially, because I had the same problem, I looked at it and I said, "What's going on?" It's from when they applied first, by which you determine that this is the older and the younger, the more recent.
It's the one column I didn't look at. Thank you, Christine. but with regards to that, people might want to look at the expiration date first. But if you want to keep the date that it was first applied, it's not clear by age what 4525 means. I mean, you might want to say something like this one's out for 5 years, this one's been out for 7 years, right? So that way that would make it clear.
Yeah.
If you want to start by the date, people aren't going to do the math, right?
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Full transparency. This was just a direct pull with some curation I did off of the DOB's open data portal on this. So good idea.
Great. And then the last letter on Francis, we understand that the DDC is ready to, is going to fix the upper part of 9th Avenue in March next year. And we are asking possibly DOT and DDC to work out a way to widen the sidewalks before they instead of reinstalling the same design that was there before. So we could have wider sidewalk, restaurant could have wider sidewalk would be better for everybody. So we don't know whether it's going to work, maybe not, but it's worth asking.
Anyone have any questions on 19? Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Dale. Going to move on to Housing, Health, Human Services, letters 2021-22, Joe and Maria.
Maria,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know. Oh, okay. I don't know which one is first, but I'm going to do the DHS letter. So for all the new members, welcome. I'm hoping you're not feeling too overwhelmed with all the letters. This letter is to the Department of...
Number 20 is Gateway.
Number 20 is Gateway. All right. So, Joe, do you want me to do that? And then
I'll do that one, then you do the next one.
Okay.
So we invited a Gateway Housing, which is an organization that is advocating conversion of hotels to both to permanent affordable housing, both supportive and otherwise, just to make a presentation because they have been talking to the board. Maria and I got briefed by them, and they had actually read the board's recently adopted policy on conversions of hotels and B&C office space for both permanent housing and shelter. And we were surprised that one of the lead advocates of this idea was very much in agreement with the board's policy. So we asked him to present what they're doing, and we heard back and actually got a response that this organization felt the board was measured and thoughtful in its approach on how to deal with this going forward. So we just wanted to note that to him. And I think Christine did send me a note saying that we should get some background as to who they are, and we'll change that letter to add that on for it. So this is pretty much an acknowledgement of their attendance at the committee, and they're talking about how the board's policy made sense.
Thank you. Any questions on 20? Betty?
Oh, just a little suggestion. Since this guy supports our policy for conversions and how we're doing it, I think the letter ought to go to the mayor's office and folks that have something to do with deciding these things, maybe Department of Homeless Services or something like that. Because I think that's important that we're saying our policy considerations are being supported by a real professional.
So we'll CC city and state agencies.
Right.
Christine?
Yes, and I'm wondering what is the best way to engage those people whenever, for those properties that that may come up for conversion, right?
The board is actually having a briefing by the state electeds tomorrow. Jesse was able to set that up just yesterday. So we're going to get a sense of what this, remember, there's $100 million in the state budget. There's no rules or regulations on how to manage it. So that's why we want to get our policy in early. And we're getting a briefing both as to where the bill is, plus the state elected officials' reaction to our policy. So we'll have more information during this month.
Okay.
It just got set up yesterday.
All right, there's no more questions for that letter?
Nope, you're good to go.
Doesn't look like it. All right, so this next letter is to Department of Homeless Services. We're also going to send it to OTDA, Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, which oversees DHS. We had 2 representatives from DHS come to committee. Actually, like 1 or 2 months ago, Lowell wrote a letter to DHS and requesting that someone from senior leadership come. We had questions about the return back from temporary shelter hotels back to congregate settings, as well as the vaccination plan. Quite frankly, it was a little bit disappointing that there was no concrete plan, let alone a tentative plan. So our letter basically demands that DHS, 4 things: must provide vaccinations on site more often than they currently do, which is once a month. Have more creative incentives for residents and staff who get the vaccination, provide a metric for return back to congregate settings, and provide a safety plan for us to review for the residents and staff when they do return back to congregate settings. The letter basically details kind of the journey we've had since 14 or 15 months ago at this point, when congregate setting shelters were being closed and relocating folks for safety reasons, obviously. The number of beds we had in the district a year ago, which was over 2,100 at the time, the unintended consequences of the density, the poor management, the impact on the community, including people's sense of safety. The letter also notes the recent assaults that have been confirmed to be individuals from hotel sites. Basically, we conclude the letter just saying that we appreciate that DHS met with us, that they actually also started to hold, since like October, they started having monthly meetings with all the providers along with CB4 at our request. They also relocated 2 sites at our request. And we closed by basically saying that it's unacceptable that there's no concrete or tentative plan around either the vaccinations or return to congregate settings. Joe, is there anything else you want to add about the letter? Or?
So this is, I'm giving a report on this afternoon, and I will say that it's not going to be full, but it's going to give you some pieces of information. I was late to the meeting because I was on a walk of the neighborhood with Speaker Johnson, with Corey, and the following people: Chief Harrison, Chief of the Department of the Police, the Head of Health and Hospitals Corporation, Head of Office of Health and Mental Health, and Steve Banks, Head of Department of Homeless Services. And we were shocked that this was pulled together. We were given about 10 minutes notice to be available. And the only 2 people to be available were myself and Marisa Rodanti, the district leader. So we walked around with quite a large contingent of people from the mayor's office and from various city agencies. And I want to give you a few important takeaways. And this is going to knock you over. Steve Banks actually acknowledged their error in concentrating so many people with mentally ill and chemical addiction in our neighborhood at once. And that alone, just having someone say that, is an amazing move ahead in this process. In the last 5 days or 6 days, Corey has reached out to a number of members of the community seeking to secure the approval of OTDA, the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, to approve the city's means and methods to move back to congregate shelters. And it is expected that that approval may happen next week. If that approval happens next week, that'll start a clock ticking. And for the first time, Maria, I got a response that they believe once they get that approval, it will take approximately 10 weeks to move all the clients out of the shelters back to the congregate settings. The next piece, which was rather surprising, is we've heard over and over from clients, from providers, that most shelter clients are saying they're not getting vaccinated on purpose, because if they don't get vaccinated, they will not have to return to the permanent congregate shelters. Steve Banks said today, and I said, can I repeat this in public? He said, yes. Irrespective of vaccination status, people will return back to the congregate shelters. So no one's going to use the idea of not getting vaccinated, because they're going to do solid protection and, you know, like a whole protocol for people who are vaccinated versus non-vaccinated. And if anything, walking around today, that there was an understanding that there is serious public safety issues in the district, and the entire team of about 15 or 18 people stopped on 39th and 9th, and there was a crowd of, I would say, 12 either very high or very drunk, aggressive individuals, and they actually started to yell at the police. Not the smartest move in general. So I will say that I think we're seeing some change. There's now some patrol along 9th Avenue between 43rd and 44th. There has been a major bust of drug selling on 40th and 8th. And although it's very late and it's happening way too little, it seems as if our community's cry about the public safety issue and the lack of management of the shelters is finally, for various reasons, hitting home. And we will begin to see some concrete results. Christine, I want you to know, I was approached earlier in the day from a member of the commissioner's staff wanting to know, could they do a special project to secure the canoe? Couldn't believe it. Right. Wow. So I think we may be turning a corner. I'm not entirely convinced, but Lowell, this came out of the blue. So
I'm aware, but Jesse, was CB4 ever contacted by any of these organizations, or did they reach out just to Joe individually?
Well, I can't speak for Joe, but we were not contacted. So it's not about being, I mean, respectfully to Joe, and makes himself available for these meetings, and I appreciate it immensely. But just to be clear, neither Corey's office nor DHS has contacted our office about this meeting that happened today, or, you know, subsequently, you know, after the letter from, you know, coming from HRA or DSS to the state about requesting the return for these folks to be returning to their original place of shelter. So unfortunately, it's not being communicated in the normal, I would say, traditional fashion. And it's
so I want to know two things here. One is, I got about 10 minutes notice on this. Corey had told me a couple of days ago it could happen today, and then it was, can you be on 44th and 9th in 10 minutes? Like, okay, I'll do that. The second thing is,
I'm not saying it's just not. It's not.
No, I'm not defending. I'm just saying that's what it is. And I know, Lowell, it's one of the weirdest circumstances I've ever been involved in, where after crying out to DHS and everybody else, help us, Steve Banks is there on a corner to take a walk and talk. So
yeah, I Joe, don't get me wrong. I appreciate your participation in this and all you do. You know that. But I think it's disgusting that they, you know, they're basically saying, okay, well, we can bring Joe in, but they're ignoring the community board. And to the extent, Brittany, I'm going to call you out here just because you're Corey's rep here. To the extent this continues, it's going to create a real problem between the board and our representative.
I have a question.
Go ahead, JD.
Yeah, I just want to. The alacrity which DHS has responded is quite stunning. Only, what is it, Joe, 12 months? I have a question for Maria and Joe.
14 months. 14 months, we haven't heard anything.
14 months, went very fast. Maria and Joe, at the meeting, DHS said that the folks could not go back until the state health agency approved. Is that still in play? Or
No,
has
they
that
actually
changed?
Joe
They
might
actually
know
did-
the answer.
No, yeah, they actually didn't say that. They just said that there's the CDC guidelines and the state guidelines or whatever. Maria and I learned 2 days later, our meeting was on May 20th. And on May 20th, Commissioner Banks sent letters, had letters sent to all the providers and to each individual resident in a shelter that the process of going back to congregate shelters was beginning. So I noted today that the representatives, Leilani and Yvonne Ballard, were really sort of hung out to dry. That's the phrase I used.
Yeah.
Because you can't have people go out to this meeting, say we don't know, the same day letters are going out saying we're starting the process.
I mean, in
Right.
addition, I should add, now that we're sharing everything and it's been
We're in
days
public.
after, yeah, is that I also met with the vice president of one of the providers in the community, and that was this week, I
Friday.
believe. That was Friday. And she had said that she was aware that DHS several days earlier, a week prior, had met with the providers and saying that you guys need to have a plan. We don't know when you're going to go back, but you will be going back. But there was no exact time frame. But that was, that was just a few days ago. So.
All right, I'm going to start opening this up to the questions because we've got a lot of hands here. Mike Noble, you were first.
Yeah, Joe, you did great work today, Joe. I must say, all the questions that I had to ask you, you answered. Because I had overhanging questions in my mind from the meeting, all right? Namely, the metric that we're looking for, well, that doesn't count now, metric's out. Being hesitant to get the vaccine because you think it might keep you where you are, that's out. My only question remaining is, did that letter that went out to the residents and to the staff tell these people that resisting the vaccine is not going to help you?
No.
No,
it didn't say that. Well, they got to be made aware that it ain't going to help.
That was one of my asks. I asked the commissioner that today to say, is there a way to make that clear to people? Because that's the word on the street that we've heard, talked to people, and the word in the shelters. Maria heard that directly from residents in shelter. That's the Skyline.
Yeah. So somebody's got to tell them that in authority, right? Okay.
Tweet.
This feels like a politically rushed and disorganized move. It's a rush move, and it's not clear why. One concern that I had from what Joe said was people who are not getting vaccinated just so they don't have to go back to the congregated shelters. They're saying, well, we're pushing them in anyway. We're going to have solid protection and protocol. I don't know what that means. Does that mean people who are vaccinated in one area and then people who are not vaccinated in another area? What does that mean?
We asked that question at our committee because it's that moment of like, give us information so we can understand it. The people they sent did not have the information. I've also gotten 2 contradictory stories that the request from OTDA was the last couple of weeks. And then I've also been told it happened in October. So I think one of the issues we're having here is at base, we know there's some management issues at DHS.
Right.
And that's being kind. It's just not a lot of communication. They send people to tell us they don't know what they're doing. The same day they send a letter saying, here's what we're doing.
Right. Well, that leads me to my next question. And it's great that you're able to make the time to come to this last minute meeting with 10 minutes notice. What happened at the end of that meeting? Were there next steps? Was there an action plan? Was it just like, okay, bye, I want to disperse?
We actually, this was less of a meeting and more of a walk. We walked along 9th Avenue, West 43rd Street to 8th Avenue, 8th Avenue, 42nd Street, down 9th Avenue. And a lot of it was talking to individuals and store owners. So the police and DHS and DHMH could hear directly the effect that's happening on people. And it was shocking. It was not like people who don't know each other at all said the exact same thing.
Right.
And we needed the police and DHS to hear this. This is not a joke. I mean, more than one restaurant owner said somebody came in and took the food off the table.
Yeah.
And I know who it is. Another guy who operates the hotel on 39th and 9th said, I'm paying homeless people to stay away from my building. I'm giving them money to stay away because there's such violence happening. Almost like a protection thing. I mean, and these are definite shelter residents. They were asked, which shelter are you in? And they said, on this one or that one. It was a Alice in Wonderland moment to you guys, But the good part is at least there's something happening and some activity on it. I think everything could have been handled better. Lowell is dead right. There's no like back and forth with the board, but at least someone's paying attention.
Well, I think, Joe, if I could jump in here, we're talking, the DHS sent somebody to your committee meeting that didn't have any answers. And they do that intentionally. They use poor Leilani as, they throw her out there with no support to take all our slings and arrows. And she knows it, and God bless her for doing it. But they set her up to fail. But it appears that she did carry the message back. We got a lot of hands up. I want to give everyone a chance, but I want to try and keep this moving as quickly as possible because
I won't get into the details of the letter itself, but my question then becomes, if DHS is going to take what is a snapshot of what's been happening for the past 14 months, can what you have be incorporated in the letter as to suggested next steps for DHS since they're not going to do it themselves?
Well, I have to say, I think it's got to have to happen on our next meeting again, because the problem here is this is a moving target tree. Every time we do something, something changes. I want to get something out there that says, at least, here's what we talked about. Like the idea of having vaccinations only once a month at a shelter, it should be every week. That's just like we're in perfect land.
All right. Thank you, Twee. I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to just, everyone, you get one question, and I want to keep this moving. David Warren.
Hey, Joe and Marie, thank you very much for doing great work. It is appreciated. My question is moving forward, and maybe you might not be able to answer it because it's so far in the future, but when they go back to the congregated shelter and they're there, first of all, will there be resources for them, meaning like not just what they had traditionally, but almost like a senior center where there's activities for them to do during the day? Because in the past, they're thrown out, like, okay, you got to leave the shelter at 9 in the morning and return at a specific time. Now, I don't know if you can answer this, but if you can keep that under consideration when you're dealing with them, so when they go back to the congregated shelters, they're not wandering the streets and creating havoc elsewhere, or even coming back to our area and then going to the shelter at night.
Well, the shelters actually have programs, activities, they have services. There's a whole suite of services that did not get imported to these temporary locations. And that's why people are failing. And then when you put on top of it that a lot of the population are mentally ill chemical abusers, that's, they need services even more and they're getting less. So the answer is yes, Dave. Yeah. They will get many more services back at the shelter.
All right, thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you so much for expressing that sentiment of not being included, as well as the district manager, pardon me. My question is this, and hopefully Joe and Maria can answer it. I've been hearing for the last 2 weeks now that there's a plan to move everybody out. However, it's the state has to sign off on it. What guarantees do we have that the state will sign off on it if Honda is still in the state budget? And Honda is something to transition over our hotels into housing. So like we're getting a yes from the city, but have we gotten anything from the state that says Honda will not affect this move out and we will see a change in our community from this high density of New Yorkers with chemical addiction and mental illness?
So all I can speak to is that the bill at hand about the conversion really has nothing to do with the current issue, because the timing is so different. Even when that's put in place, it's regulations, it's going to take literally a good part of a year to have something actually happen. And we've been informed by even gateway housing. We're talking a maximum of like 4 or 5 projects citywide. So I don't think this is our main concern. The other part though is we have no guarantees on anything. And the fact that this has become a huge issue, has continued to be an issue, and now people are responding to it, that's our best thing. So whatever we can do to keep it in their minds and hearts, that's what we have to do.
I look forward to the next committee meeting. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chair.
Katie.
Thanks. Just some comments on the letter itself. In line 33, you talk about poor management by providers. I'm hoping that you can add in front of the word providers, you can add the word some.
Yes, it is some.
Exactly.
Wait a minute.
It's not
Hold
all.
on.
And I think it's really important that we're careful about our language.
Line 33.
Line 33. adding the word some.
It's not all providers, it's some of the bad ones we got.
Exactly. So I really want us to be clear about that.
Mhm.
Also, under the public safety section, you talk about how Clinton and Hell's Kitchen are, quote, dangerous and unacceptable. I think it's really important that, I mean, as a community board, we don't want to be saying that visitors shouldn't be coming because it's super dangerous. Joe, you used the language earlier that we have serious public safety issues. And I think that's what we should be saying in the letter, not that it's dangerous, throughout our neighborhood, right? I think.
Although
again,
I
we have
do
to be
note, I
sort of
tell my
careful.
family not to come.
Say it again?
I do note, I tell my family not to visit now.
It is dangerous, and my family's in Puerto Rico because of it.
I think you're right, though, Katie.
I do think we
should
just need
modify
to be
it.
mindful
Yeah.
about,
Yep.
and also you refer in line 71 to a 1900% increase in crime.
Oh, yes, thank you. I meant to say that needs to be, that's not correct. I think it's.
I was going to say that's, okay.
No, that is the correct number in Midtown South from March. That's the accurate number.
That is the accurate number I have from Brian Weber.
I thought Midtown South said 300%.
Nope. This was on the record from the commander about assaults and arrests and sometimes of felonies. My jaw dropped when I heard that, Katie.
Well, we can confirm this. We'll get.
Yeah,
let's
confirm.
And I think it's really important, even if it's 1900%, then we have to be clear about what kind of crime and where, because that is not the number citywide. And I think that's going to get us a lot of attention that we don't want. I think we have to be really clear about.
We're gonna get.
Katie, I have the numbers in front of me, if I may, and I received this from Brian Weber.
Chris LeBron, can you just email that to us? Joe and I?
Chris, let's just get the right citation and confirm it. Katie's right. That number is going to cause a lot of.
They can fix it. We don't have to discuss it forever.
Yep.
Okay.
And just qualify whatever it applies to.
All right. Christine,
That's
okay. I wrote that.
Christine, please.
Yes. So who organized the tour?
Corey Johnson.
And Corey was there in the meeting?
Corey led the tour.
With Steve
Corey
Banks.
led the tour.
Yeah.
It's Steve Banks. Yep.
Steve Banks, the chief of the department.
I heard everybody else. I heard.
Corey led.
Should the letter now my next question, should the letter be modified to reflect some things you heard during the tour?
I feel that's what we should talk about at our next meeting and, do follow up all these people because this is very unusual. We would have this kind of circumstance, right, Lowell?
Okay.
That's what I was going to say. This did not take place,
I see.
Joe was there. The community board was not notified or involved to make it into a community board
No,
letter.
you're right. Forget about it. Lower the hand.
Thank you, Christine. I was going to ask that anyway. I was going to ask that, so.
Leslie, and then we're done here.
Thank you. The letter is great, as usual, guys. This is like your 1000th letter on this. But I just want to gloss over that Lowell, I'm going to back up Lowell on something here. I think that what has happened, and we kind of know that Corey or elected officials have been calling quote unquote friendlies to kind of talk about this. And the fact that he did not, or whoever did not call Lowell or Jesse, I think is a little bit disturbing. And I think we shouldn't gloss over that because I think it is setting a very bad precedent on procedure. I think if he knows how this, or elected, the city, whoever, knows how the community board here has talked about this over and over again. And for him not to contact Jesse or Lowell, I think was calculated. Number two, this is not a surprise, Joe. When Joe's like, this is out of nowhere. No, and this is me as a reporter, a former reporter talking. This was because West 42nd, I want to give credit where credit is due. West 42nd Street, which is a hyper-local publication.
Magazine, right.
Put a light on this. And I think that's really important. And it's, if I can get to a bigger, philosophy on how important local news is and local publications are to do something like that. Because the minute that article went out, that is when the wheels started turning, not when we were talking about it for months and months. And I just want to highlight that to, again, how important these hyper local and these small papers are, especially to our community. And that's it.
So I just want to close this out by saying I received a call earlier that I mentioned from Christine from the Monahan's office, and that a detective actually watched our YouTube video of the HHHS committee and was so struck by it. That's why he reached out to say, what can we do? Because the stories we heard in that committee, for everyone who wasn't there, some of them were the most heart-rending discussions yet again we've heard. And people who have been hurt, people who were afraid to admit they were mugged, and a man with a traumatic brain injury mugged. I mean, it's just sort of like, it was unbelievable we heard that night. So when I say out of the blue, the tour was out of the blue, but clearly there's a continuum, Leslie, that's happened here. And I am not going to underestimate that we're getting a response, and we need to go with that response because we need to have something happen here. The neighborhood is hanging on by a thread in many ways. So I just want to say that up front. The store owners that talked today were just unbelievably direct and saying the most horrific things happening to them and their patrons over and over. So it was good for all these people to hear this directly.
Joe, that person that was hurt happened to be a doctor, long-standing doctor in the community. And the guy's, seriously injured by the very people that he treats. And I'm sure that the detective, saw that and that, affected him as much as us.
One man spoke and said he was embarrassed to say he had been mugged twice. He's been here for like 30 years in the neighborhood.
Before we move on to the next letter, I have to say that it's super upsetting and frustrating, right? That the lack of communication, but finally it is happening. And we are getting word about what, the moves that are going to be happening. So I'm grateful for that.
We're finally getting some answers after 14 months of asking for them.
But your letter, Lowell, I don't know what happened. And you're the chair of CB4. I don't know. Anyway, we can move on to the next letter.
Yes.
Please.
So the next one is 312 West 43rd Street. And just for committee members or for the new members, this is a little bit complicated because normally we get, we don't have a building that is in a split zoning lot. So there's not as many affordable housing units that there would be as normally as part of the inclusionary housing zoning. And then in the other part of this already went through, this item went through for special permit, Clinton Health Kitchen land use. This is now the affordable housing side of it. And then we are used to getting, when there's a 70-30, the units that are under the 421A tax exemption program, we get comments on that. However, that law changed and they no longer get referred to us. So this was a lot of confusion as we talked to this in committee, realizing that it's two separate programs, one of which we comment on, one of which we don't. But we have a process that we go through and ask for the same things pretty much throughout. We ask for the units, the breakdown, the distribution of the units. We specifically ask for what the residential finishes are, making sure that they're equal among the affordable and the market rate units. This developer has worked with the board before, so they came in rather prepared. So we have almost everything the same in this building. And we do things like there were questions about street tree planting, which was handled before. And the developer then commits to us in a letter, which will be attached to this, which is not attached to this one, Jesse, that they are doing X, Y, or Z. So that will be attached because they've already committed, they haven't done a formal letter on it. So questions on this, it is 15 affordable units, but then there's a whole host of units that are temporarily affordable, and the affordability there is 40 years.
Marty?
Thank you. A couple of observations, I think, more than anything else, and really question. The 421A here, you say, is 40 years. What is the, it was shorter. I guess that must have changed. 35 is the number that jumps to my brain.
It was 35 years before, Marty.
What is your experience with the expiration of 421A? Does it always go back to market, or is it sometimes extended? And I don't mean just because a resident is in the apartment.
Right. So how it works right now, after the 40-year termination period, any resident who remains in the unit and is rent stabilized, they are protected. If the unit changes, in other words, becomes vacant, then the regulation with the affordability evaporates, is gone. Marty, in most developers, they are seeking further tax exemptions and they try to keep them as affordable for other reasons. on the related buildings, we have 3 locations that we actually worked out extension of the 421A regulations as part of Hudson Yards rezoning and Western Rail Yards rezoning. But not many buildings have come up for expiration. They're just happening in the last like 2 or 3 years.
So we don't have experience with that yet. Thank you. The observation I had was something you made a comment about. You said most of the apartments affordable and market rate were the same, but there is a table in there, and in my look at the table, it's just words and I can't really tell. It looked like they were actually, some of the kitchen finishes were actually different.
The only difference is bizarrely the appliances. And this is the first time we've ever heard of this. Instead of all getting stainless steel appliances, normally they would try to put like white appliances in the affordable and stainless steel in the market. Every affordable is getting stainless steel appliances, and for the market rate, they're panelized, meaning they disappear behind the cabinets. And for the first time as a group, we felt like that was just not that important. You know, everything else is the exact same. That is the only difference, Marty.
So I think you just said it doesn't matter.
It was an amazing moment of like our committee saying, really? They're getting Bosch ranges, Bosch microwaves, Bosch, I mean, like the highest grade, you know, stainless steel appliances.
Put that in the letter.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, we'll highlight it better.
Are we worried that there's any difference at all? Does that set a precedent, even if it's the high end stuff?
It was the first time we felt like it was high end being beat out by higher end. Like it wasn't as if they were getting a lesser grade of anything.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Any other questions on 22? All right. Thank you. Item 23 is coming out of the executive committee because it was a joint letter between Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use and Transportation. Christine, are you going to take this one or is JD?
I don't know, is JD there?
Christine.
Okay.
Christine, go ahead.
So we have discovered that, background, Port Authority replacement is going to apply to some of the blocks which are on Dyer Avenue, and then some of the blocks are not going to be taken care by the Port Authority replacement. We found that there is a law being introduced for a new program, and the new program, that's a federal program, and that would allow people to apply for grants to stitch together a neighborhood. Like if you think about the Dyer Avenue or the Bronx Cross Bronx Expressway, you want to cover the Bronx and connect the two sides of the Bronx so people can really reconnect as communities. And what we have in Hell's Kitchen is the same thing with Dyer Avenue, where we want to reconnect the two sides of Dyer Avenue. And so for those blocks which are not addressed by the Port Authority replacement, we would like to that program to be designed in such a way so that we can apply for it and possibly we can win the grant. So this is really asking our elected officials that to meet with them so we can review the program and make sure it does apply to Dyer Avenue.
All right. Any questions about 23?
Dean?
And then Joe.
Just one addition. After line 35, where it says to funnel into the Lincoln Tunnel, can we add and connect to the Long Island Expressway, by the never-built 30th Street Mid-Manhattan Expressway? Because it sort of says why all those things were there.
Okay, you want to send that to me by
Yep, I'll do it.
email?
Yep.
That'd be
Yep.
good, thanks.
And Betty.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this because some of you may recall that the Hell's Kitchen South Neighborhood Plan, Coalition Neighborhood Plan, exactly proposed knitting together the two sides, that area, Hell's Kitchen South area. So I really, really hope that we get the grant money for this project.
And I want to thank Betty because a lot of that language is coming from the plan. And she did work extraordinarily to design that plan and to write that plan.
Yeah.
And to Dale as well, which has really.
This is essentially carrying your work with the Kitchen South forward.
Right.
Right. It's a steering committee worked on it. But anyway.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Katie has a.
Jeffrey, then Katie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Over the moon about this. I wonder if we can put a link to the Times story from this past weekend about how highways have destroyed cities across the country, distinct to America, of course, in their nature, because this is actually the implication is a direct connection. And I think it was just a great story that ties, we're writing a federal letter, basically, showing that it's a national example, and this is a micro example of how it can help.
Yeah, we'll do.
Katie?
I'm sorry, I'm just having spatial issues. Can you, I just couldn't figure it out. Can you tell me sort of what blocks this applies to?
Yes, so Dyer Avenue start at 30th Street, right? And it's mostly covered up to 34th Street.
Yeah.
And 34 to 33rd, it's a trench, it's a cut, which is open. And then 35 to 36, there is a portion which is cut and another portion which is at grade, okay? And then we'll get to 37, which will be taken care of. 37 is cut, but the Port Authority will do it. And then 38 to 39 is cut, but the Port Authority will do it. And
okay,
then,
so this is just trying to.
Right, so some of them are going to be done by the Port Authority and some of them are not in the plan. And we want to continue the cover for those which are underground.
And by the Port Authority, she's talking about as part of the bus terminal reconstruction.
The bus, yeah, I mean, part of the bus terminal proposal that we have seen, presented.
Okay, great.
And there are lots of specific instances where pedestrian mobility is impeded by what's in place in the area.
Yeah, you literally can't
walk from Dyer Avenue from 34th Street to 37th Street, for instance.
The sidewalks are 2 feet wide.
And exactly, and some of the sidewalks are not up.
All right, everyone, I'd like to try and wrap this up. It's 10 o'clock. Marty, very quickly.
Takeaway I got from the article that Jeffrey was talking about is that once they are stitched together, we still have work to do. The communities that are being stitched together throughout the country do not return to their original communities. So the work ain't over. This is a great achievement, but we have our vigilance, and the kind of discussion you're having is wonderful.
Okay.
Marty, that was raised at the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee about that very thing you're bringing up, that it's important that the community that is restitched together serves some of the community that was torn apart.
Thanks, JD. That's 23. We have a new business item, number 24. Christine, can you present the new business item?
Yes, unfortunately, a pedestrian was killed at 42nd and 11. That intersection is really very dangerous. It's not clear whether the person was killed at the intersection or a little further down on 42nd Street. But we have been asking for a long time to get better signals at that intersection. So we are taking that opportunity to ask again and say, why don't you finish the job there and make this intersection safer, because it is not safe right now.
It's 10 o'clock.
Well, somebody told us what time it is. Christine, all right, does anyone have questions on the new business letter number 24? Okay, we're going to move to a vote. Now for this, I'm going to explain this for the new people, but for everyone else, pay attention too, because we have 3 roll call items tonight. What we do is we do a single roll call, and then you vote on each letter. If you are voting yes on everything, you typically can say yes to all, and that covers you. But since we need to do roll calls on items 1, 2, and 5, what I am asking everyone to do is vote specifically yes on 1, yes on 2, yes on 5, yes to the rest. If you're voting no on any letter, please call out what number letter you're voting no on. If you have to abstain or you're present, not eligible, or otherwise not voting about a specific letter, please just call that out. For the new people, I'm not telling you how to vote, but I do know that Jesse emailed, and I want to just remind you, if you're not comfortable voting on anything tonight, you don't have to, because you've been on this board for 2 days and you're not expected to have mastered all of this yet. So if you want to abstain, you can abstain on everything. But again, please call out 1, 2, and 5 separately, because we need separate roll calls on that. Does anyone have any questions about voting procedure? Mike and Leslie, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm going to call out some names, some of which are superfluous because they're not here, but they're on the list that Janine gave me today. And they're the people who were no longer board members, but they're still on the list.
If they're no longer board members.
Yeah, sorry, Mike, that they shouldn't be, they shouldn't have been on the list.
Okay, so omit them.
You can ignore them.
All right, I'm going to omit Marty and Rhonda then. Those are the only two I see here that are on there. Anyway.
Martin Street, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So one other point though, the vote sheets being sent back into the office, at the end of the night. 5 people didn't submit their vote sheets last time, and I found an easy way to not forget is to open a tab on your computer. Just go to the vote sheet. It came out this morning at 11:20 this morning from Jesse. Open it up. Then at the end of the night, you got to submit it. And there it is. Anyway. So
yeah.
I will, okay.
Thank you, Mike. Just real quickly, just to be clear, for clarity's sake for the new members, right? In addition to the roll call you're providing right now, that's public for the public notice, for the public meeting, you need to fill out the vote sheet that was the link that was sent to you earlier.
Yeah, so it's Jesse's 11:20 a.m. email to you. There's a link there. All right, so let's start with Sarah Appleton.
Okay, so yes on 1, yes on 2, yes on 5, and yes on the rest.
Ted Arenas.
Yes to 1, yes to 2, yes to 5, and yes to all the rest.
Roberta Barnett.
Yes to 1, abstain to 2, yes to 5, and yes to all the rest.
Christine Berthay.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to all.
Gwen Billig. I'll come back to Gwen. Leslie Murphy.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to all.
Viren.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, yes to all.
Jessica Chait.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Dale Corvino.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, yes to the rest, and my vote sheet is submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Judith Dayhill. She's somebody who's not supposed to be on the list.
Yeah, no, Judith is no longer on the board.
No longer on the board.
Okay. Marty Ducat.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5. Yes to all the rest, and my vote sheet is submitted.
Paul Devlin.
Paul had to leave early. He submitted his vote sheet for the items he was here for the discussion on.
Okay. Tina.
Yes to 1, 2, 5, and yes to the rest.
Pete Diaz.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to all others.
Tina Nelson.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Brett Furfer. I see him, but he shouldn't be on the list, right?
Brett is no longer on the board. He's here out of masochism.
Yeah. Elzora.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Wendy,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Jesse Greenwalk,
Greenwald, yes to 1, 2, and 5, and abstain on the rest.
sorry, Jesse, it's misspelled here. Candace Hewitt,
Yes to 1, yes to 2, yes to 5, yes to all the rest.
Frank,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest. And I think you skipped David.
David, yeah, David.
He's always
David.
before me.
I got you. David Holoka,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
thank you. Josephine,
Yes on 1, abstain on 2, yes on 5, and yes to the rest.
Peggy. Is Peggy here tonight?
No.
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 Okay. Carrie Keenan,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to all.
Blake,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to all the rest.
Bert,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to all the remaining.
Chris LeBron,
I vote yes to 1, 2, and 5. I vote aye on the remaining items.
Jeffrey,
Yes on 1, 2, and 5, and yes on the rest.
Betty,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Mike Noble, yes on 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Sarah.
That's me. That's
I
me.
think we,
What's that?
I think you missed Sarah.
Sarah Mills, yeah?
Yep. Yes on 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest. Thanks, Leslie.
JD,
Yes to 1, 2, and yes to 5, and yes to all the rest.
Maria,
yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Alan Oster,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Brad Pascarella,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest. Great work.
okay, Tweed,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest. But for the new people, they have to type in on number 25 in the sheet, the new item business number 4, item 24, before they hit submit.
I was gonna get to that. Thank you, Tweed.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Joe Restuccia,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Sabrina Revron,
Yes to 1, 2, 5, and yes to the rest.
Dolores,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, present not eligible on 15, yes to the rest.
is David Solnick still with us?
Yes on 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Great. Katie Stokes,
Sorry. Yes on 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Kit Tollerson,
Yes on 1, 2, and 5, yes on the rest.
Hector Vasquez,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Rob Walker,
Yes to 1, yes to 2, yes to 5, and yes to the rest.
James Wallace,
Yes to 1, yes to 2, yes to 5, yes to Pride, happy Pride Month, and yes to the rest.
David Warren,
Yay to 1, 2, and 5, and yay to the rest. And I
Leslie
submitted my
Will-
vote sheet.
okay, great. Leslie Williams,
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and the rest.
Alice Wong,
Good evening. I abstain from all the votes.
okay, Colin Wright, was Colin here tonight?
I don't believe I saw Colin.
Let's see him.
No,
I did see him.
yeah, anyway. Lowell Kern,
Yes to 1, yes to 2, yes to 5, yes to the rest.
I think that's it.
We have someone here. I have on my sheet, Vikram.
Oh, he's not here
Is
tonight.
he not here?
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Try Glenn again.
What's that?
Try Gwen again.
Oh, yeah, Gwen Billard.
She's here.
Oh, I see her.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes to 1, 2, and 5, and yes to the rest.
Oh,
Or,
okay, very good. Thank you, Bert, and thank you, Gwen. So
All right.
yes.
Mike,
new
is that
bus- the-
everyone?
The new business item. You got to fill it in. You got to write it in.
Right, on the vote sheet, you gotta write it in, item number 24, transportation, letter, and then you have to vote yes or no. Or abstain, present not eligible, or whatever else you're voting.
It's in number 25 on the list.
Yep. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Yay!
Seconded. Fight a marathon.
Thank you all.
Complete your vote sheet. Complete your vote sheet.
Hey, nice snug, Alan.
everyone.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Jeffrey, get me one of those, Jeffrey.
Don't
I can
forget
make
the
that
weekend
happen.
down in, don't forget the weekend.